All right, we are back on time. 6:30 p.m. 3/13/2025. I didn't get here for 3/11, which is something of a very important hoax anniversary that we generally pay a great deal of attention to. I saw that I think John LeBon had a live stream to talk about that particular hoax anniversary, and we've had a lot of interesting connections since the last 3/11 that I would have called in to talk about, but I'm sure we'll get to it, because one of the things that's interesting about the 3/11 thing in particular is how much of it was predicted in sitcoms, like in the context of comedy. And that specifically we saw a lot of correlations between season and episode numbers and subsequent events. I mean, real interesting example when we talk about predictive programming, how it's in themes, but it seems to be also reflected in numbers. And I don't know if it's some kind of organizing strategy or some kind of procedure they have, and we're just looking at its architecture. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. We aren't just connecting dots. We aren't just cherry picking. Specifically when we talk about concurrent programming and the obvious overlapping of entertainment and future news events that we deem fake, and how sometimes the media even notes these things. Well, as I've been talking about, we're going to start incorporating AI to retro auto hoax the 20th century to go into very granular detail about these events, the participants, the actors, the law enforcement, politicians, and specifically the reporters. And more patterns are going to be emerging. So what's interesting here is that this is something of a paradigm shift, because the orthodoxy in Trutherville is that this is not caused by man, that this is, again, some sort of simulation theory, video game, matrix, and these patterns are not intentional. But I'm sorry, but that explanation has no legs anymore. And I've said it before jokingly, but now a little more seriously, synchromysticism as an explanation for what we're talking about is as dead as the Mandela effect. It offers no predictive capability. So, for example, I had noted that the trailer for Mickey 17, and you may have seen Mickey 17, it has, I haven't watched it yet, but it has this character in the trailer who's wearing a hoodie. And when I saw it, I said, hey, this guy looks way too much like Luigi. So the movie then, I'd guessed, is going to have some kind of subtext relating to this Luigi versus Trump versus Musk. This sort of connection there is kind of inferred because we've noticed this pattern. Well, it turns out that director Bong Joon-ho and Mark Ruffalo claim that their villain that Ruffalo plays is not based on Trump, but he obviously is. And we'll get into this and more, but my point here is that this is something that we're constantly predicting. And if this was random, if this wasn't systemic, if this wasn't part of an MO, we wouldn't predict these instances with regularity, nor would we find these patterns. So I'm using AI to do scraping of data from various websites. I'm using Perplexity, Grok, and others. And I'm trying to find the best way to automate the deconstruction of fake news and the gathering of those paying attention around certain events so that we can be competitive in terms of breaking news. But instead of breaking fake news or alternative media biases or second shooter theories, we come right in with a rational, skeptical approach. So let me just show you an example, because I think I sent this out on the newsletter just so you'd know what I've been doing these last few days with my research and development. And we're upgrading everything, but we're accelerating right now. This is the auto hoax accelerationism. We're activating bots. In fact, if you go to autohoax.com, which is a domain that was somewhat dormant for a few years, it now hosts a blog. And it's just one of many. I have some redundancies, but the point of it is, this is where I'm going to be dropping a lot of this information, this content, before I post it onto the wiki, which is it's an X-Wiki site. So if you go to autohoax.com, there's a button there, or you go to Insider, that website, and there's a button that says join the wiki. But we'll get to that. But here we go. This is going to be the regular time, by the way. Buzz Dean says early. I'm trying to do 6 to 9 as a window every day. But we'll go over the points of interest, and then we'll go into the new stuff that's come out. I mean, this stuff is, it's unbelievable if you don't know how media works. But let me just give you an example. So right now, I was noticing a trailer for this movie, Mickey 17, has Mark Ruffalo. So when I see Mark Ruffalo, I think Hulk. And it had me thinking about this for a minute there, because there's been this theme with Hulk building up. So I posted this article today, President Hulk. And I would not have come across this information about the character Kenneth Marshall if it wasn't for this AI scraping of information, because I haven't watched the movie yet. So right now, we have Mickey 17, new movie, and the villain is Kenneth Marshall, played by Mark Ruffalo. And he's clearly based on Donald Trump, despite what the director says. And Slate did an article on it, and they said it varies greatly from the book. So does A Man in Full, differs from the Tom Wolfe book. They're taking books, and they're bending them to correlate them to not just real-world events like satire and parody, but specifically setting the stage for future fake events. Fake being the key word. So here's an example. Marshall, an empty suit with preposterous hair, is obsessed with his image and being on TV. He's not religious, but he uses religion to manipulate people. He does a dorky little dance to pump people up. He hoards the wealth while his loyal followers eat glops of gray paste. And they get excited at the idea of colonizing a pure white planet. At one point, he barely escapes a bullet aimed for his head. So clearly, we're looking at some kind of parallels here with Trump and the survived assassination attempt. But anyway, here's the weird Hulk connection. Harrison Ford is the president in Captain America: Brave New World, and they had to release an alternate trailer because the first trailer had a scene where the president is getting shot at while he's at the podium. And this scene in this trailer came out on July 12th. Trump was shot on July 13th. So they changed it because of the proximity of the release. So a couple of things really stood out about this. Harrison Ford's birthday, 7/13, same with Julius Caesar, which has already been connected to Trump, with Caesar in the park where he was stabbed, and he was basically, this Julius Caesar was basically Trump. And also Caesar in Megalopolis is based on Trump. And we'll get into these Trump villain connections because there are so many of them that I've unearthed just with a couple of cursory searches. But Harrison Ford represents Trump in this context. The trailer comes out where he's getting shot, and then Trump gets shot in real life, and it's such an obvious thing that Marvel changes the trailer. Just like the Homelander had a scene in The Boys where the Homelander is Trump, and there's an assassination run, final episode. They had to change the title there as well. So sometimes the real-time overlapping of fake news events and the propaganda in the entertainment overlap, like real time. And the AI is noticing. The AI will say, well, this isn't possible. It's only a coincidence because it was recorded and produced a year before. So the AI is not making the right connection here, that this is intentional. So now here's where it gets interesting. Harrison Ford, representing Donald Trump in Captain America, becomes the Red Hulk. Now, I've talked about the Red Hulk before. And Kevin Mooring says it's Putin. I think it's connected to that because we're talking about MAGA extremism, Trump in his final form. But the Hulk connection here is what I'm pointing out. So you have the Mark Ruffalo, President Trump character, gets shot at. He played the Hulk, the Green Hulk. So Green Hulk, and then you have Red Hulk. But I think it represents MAGA, fully empowered MAGA extremism. And also, interestingly, when Captain America was premiering in Washington in the Liberty Theater, the ceiling collapsed, which kind of correlates with all of this in terms of the Liberty ceiling collapsing, theater, where the assassination attempt was. So anyway, here's two Hulk things. But now there's this. After Trump was shot in Butler, Hulk Hogan introduced him, spoke at the RNC. So if you remember this RNC speech where Hulk Hogan is talking about how he remembers looking up at Trump bleeding, and it made him think of Hulkamania when he was on the stage bleeding. So here's Hulk Hogan. Now, he didn't point out the fact that they were both using theatrical blood, but here's Hogan, bloody head. Here's Hogan, his trademark signaling touching his ear, which I think is all foreshadowing for this big mega psyop that's unfolding. Trump and Hogan hanging out, WWE Hall of Famers. But again, the connection here, we have two movies that have the theme of Trump getting shot at. One of the movies came out the day before, so it was altered. Both of them have the Hulk character just kind of there. And then there's Trump with the Hulk associated with the incident in Butler. Now, what does this all mean? I don't know, you tell me. What does this mean, President Hulk? I'm just pointing out an obvious pattern. And I have a link here to the IPS Deep Dive number 1, Predictive Programming for Trump's Head Wound, and how far back this goes. So I was talking to this Perplexity, which is one of the sites I've been using. And I said to it, please tell me of any examples of Trump as some kind of a villain. And I did a little bit of digging into this. And I came up with quite a bit. And then I also have a couple of other examples where I've got information, I think, that kind of bolsters our big picture here. So examples of Trump as a modern villain in predictive programming. So it's not just Biff Tannen. Here's Mark Ruffalo. Confirmed Trump-inspired antagonists in modern cinema. More recently, Mickey 17 features Kenneth Marshall, Mark Ruffalo. Significant connections. And you can find all this on the wiki. There's pages of details here, including the part where he shot Trump as a direct character in film. You've got Walter Trump in Trackdown. We've talked about this one. He is a character, a charlatan. He goes into a town, and this is described by the media as a remarkable historical coincidence. The episode was End of the World, which aired on May 9th, 1958. Also a very intriguing date, which we could get into in this context. The character uses fear-mongering tactics in this small town of, and it's a Texas town. Trump got his start in Texas, by the way. Trump started at the border. That's where he first came out with the MAGA hat. And he said he's going to build the wall. So the character shows up in a small town in Texas, Walter Trump. He uses fear-mongering to manipulate the people. And he warns that there will be a catastrophic cosmic event that will strike their town and bring about an apocalypse, and he can save them. So the idea of him building a magic wall, a wall made of magic metal to repel meteors, was what he was selling the public. So this is tying into Trump's Space Force and his anti-illegal immigrant thing. So he's protecting us from aliens, both terrestrial and extraterrestrial. Remarkable parallels between fiction and reality. Fictional Walter Trump has the rhetoric, the world will come to a flaming end. Only I can solve the problem. Trust me, I can build a wall that nothing will penetrate. Trump said, I alone can fix it. And then you have other things here, the lawsuits, the fact that Trump was arrested. And this character was arrested. And when this was first brought to mass media attention, it was 2016, long before Trump was arrested. So this bit of predictive programming hadn't even fully been realized when we noticed it. So you can look back at any movie that contains predictive programming, and you could pretty much be sure that it's not just telling you about 9/11. It's going to have multiple references. Trump as Homelander from The Boys. The parallels between Donald Trump and the Homelander, and the unsettling storyline coincidence. Homelander as Trump allegory. Nuanced portrayal beyond simple parody. Evolution of the Trump-Homelander connection. Unsettling coincidence. Fiction precedes reality. In a disturbing convergence of fiction and reality, season 4 finale featured a plotline with similarities to the real-world assassination attempt on Trump on July 13th. So the episode was released 5 days after the shooting. And it says here, the timing creates a profound, uncomfortable situation for the show's creators and Amazon took immediate action to rename the episode, and they put a warning on it. Production timeline and official response. There's a whole lot more here, but I'm just pointing out here a number of Trump villains. There are more. BuzzFeed published an article, 15 actual Donald Trump quotes spoken by villains. Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin, Hans Gruber from Die Hard, Joker from Dark Knight. There's the Bane stuff. But the timing of it is the main thing. The timing is the big part. So these are just a few examples, but what I'm pointing out here is that we're getting really good information by employing AI for mass media deconstruction faster than I've ever been able to dredge up information. We have our think tank. We have eyes and ears everywhere. We're always looking, and we're getting incredible information. But now I'm automating it, and we're going to get this information faster and, purer strains of objective truth, of facts, which are banned substances. And we're going to continue to clarify our picture. And I don't have any issues with people's interpretations of events. Some people think the news is real. Some people know it's propaganda, but they think it's right-wing propaganda or it's liberal media. But the truth of it is, we're looking at something of a closed informational system that is manipulated with psyops. It's manipulated with subtle perception management operations, and it includes the total co-opting of all propaganda vectors, specifically entertainment, particularly movies, but also movies, books, comic books, video games, you name it. If it can be used to transmit information to a large body of people, it's probably been co-opted for the big psyops. And one other point here that's worth emphasizing, predictive and concurrent programming only ever predict and reference fake staged events. Prove me wrong. Okay, continuing. Let's just go through the points of interest, and then we'll see who's managed to join us. I know it's early. Points of interest for 311. So we missed a couple days. Alex Jones revealed that Jamie White, an InfoWars reporter, was brutally murdered in Austin. Another reporter claimed that he was getting swatted. Swatting is fake. It doesn't happen that way. Was Jamie White really killed? I hope not. But it didn't seem psyopy to me. I mean, some people are calling it fake just because he called Sandy Hook fake, but Sandy Hook was fake, so they're not doing it in all honesty. They're doing it to be ironic and cruel. But I have no reason to think it was fake. I didn't see anything that would indicate fakery. Although it didn't stop Trump from saying it was George Soros. I mean, not Trump, Jones. Alex Jones kind of inferring that this was because George Soros let loose the criminals. I mean, he was still using it. Okay, so this is another interesting one. Adam Driver, in an article, reflects on the eerie parallels between his film White Noise and the real-life Ohio derailment. He calls the connection terrifying. Now, here's another development, too. We've been talking about the madness and Luigi and how it connects to the madness, and how the villain in the madness is Elon Musk, a billionaire who steals the election and finances right-wingers to get violent with Nazi ideology. So we've talked about this, and how in the movie they're described as Antifa with Uzis on meth. And the idea of this was that there's going to be this leftist uprising, and the assassin was like a symbol, so the people protected him. That's Luigi. And the story is starting to unfold where now you have the numerous stories of Teslas being attacked, protests against Musk, the White House saying that attacking a Tesla dealership is now domestic terrorism. So we have seen the rise of this left-wing pushback against Musk, as predicted on Netflix, The Madness. Yeah, another Infowars guy, his name is Chase Geyser, claims he was swatted. Not sure if I believe it. But yes, violence against Tesla will be considered domestic terrorism as per crisis actor in chief. But all of this was 100% predicted. And by the way, the Cybertruck, and there's a lot of them here now, I see them all the time. The Cybertruck comes out of Blade Runner. And what is Blade Runner about? Well, Blade Runner, based on a Philip K. Dick. Great. He's like the he's like the science fiction H.P. Lovecraft. He has actually been, his work has been featured in a lot of metascripted films that contain propaganda tied to future fake events. And Blade Runner was set in Los Angeles 2019, which is exactly when and where the Cybertruck emerged, and it looks like it came out of that movie. And the movie's about replicants, which are cyborgs, or basically with AI that is so sophisticated and their physical appearance is so realistic that they're able to pass. So it's like deep fakes. I call them replicants. Anyway, just thought I'd mention the Blade Runner connection. Which, remember, everything about Musk comes from science fiction. All right, let's see who's here in the chat. Benton Kevin Mooring says, "Hi, 5G Trevor. I randomly clicked listen now, and you just started. That's some synchronicity." And I think our numbers are going to go up if we keep this earlier time frame. And I've been putting a lot of work into side gigs on the side, getting back into publishing and stuff in the arts. And I'm pretty sure I can maintain a stable 6:30 or 6 o'clock even p.m. Mountain Time schedule, at least for the next couple months. And I'll try to go 7 days a week. I like routine. Roxy P. Trippa, Trimmin B3000, Flat Bob. Kevin Mooring says hot dogs and Michelle Obama. Don't know what you mean, but the Obamas are interesting for a lot of reasons. And when we talk about the manipulation of media, we have to talk about the fact that this is from the top down and it involves government. And so the Obamas getting into Higher Ground Productions, putting out that movie Leave the World Behind, shows that they immediately got their hands into the business of PSYOPs, of the PSYOP entertainment complex. That whole movie, Leave the World Behind, it's one of the most ham-fisted propaganda films I've seen in a long time, where it's just blatant, it's obvious. It's good in the sense that it's if you want to explain how they're manipulating our worldview, that movie has the best, I think, and the clearest exposition of the subtext of all of our news about this breaking of society into 1619 versus 1776, the significance of Trump on the world stage, and the coming helter-skelter Turner Diary narrative. It's all encoded into the movie. But the fact that it's the Obamas makes it even more interesting. Joined by, okay, let's go. Reverse history. King Ravana says, Donny Osmond, Joey Fatone, Killer Whales with the original Vegas show tune lounge singers. Now they just spit Shamu into the mouths of the audience at SeaWorld. Not sure what that means, but I like your comment. Why would Trump buy a Tesla? This character has never drove anywhere, says Kevin Mooring. I saw one video where he was driving his kid around, Barron, and he drives a golf cart. I saw him in the red Tesla, and it kind of reminded me of the Starman in the red, was it a Roadster? It kind of reminded me of Starman. And Starman, of course, anagram, Mr. Satan, Bowie effigy going into space. There might be something there. Joined by JT, Salty Siren says, the next PSYOP is ramping up. I sent you the culprit already in a document. Keep your eyes peeled. They're marking people now. Yeah, it's been kind of quiet. I mean, after panic, we had the fires, LA got nuked, the drones attacked New Jersey, and now this. So now this period of peacefulness. Oh, we had a bunch of plane crashes, a plane hitting a helicopter. I was like, this is the week of fiery immolations in the sky, fiery deaths, dramatic deaths, tragedies, a Challenger explosion, and then we had the AA hitting the helicopter. It was the week of the Kobe Bryant helicopter explosion. I mean, we need to get our hands on their calendar. Although we're pretty good at predicting things. King Ravana says, guitar smashing by Indy Jones Harrison Ford in the new Great Circle video game. Well, the significance of Harrison Ford playing the president getting shot at connects to specifically the date. I think the name Ford, like Ford Theater, which kind of references Abe Lincoln. Do you still have the live stream covering the assassination attempt? Yeah, we were live when it happened, and Isabel Ann, our resident astrologer, had just pointed out how the conditions, astrologically speaking, suggested a headshot. And it had to do with the position of the star Algol. And moments after I read that comment, people heard a pop, pop, pop in Butler. What a magic trick. And that was a magic trick. O'Brake says the director who made Mickey 17 also made Snowpiercer. Okay, so that's... I'm going to have to watch it. Snowpiercer was a very kind of a gritty, grungy movie. I think it had a bunch of cannibalism suggested in it, but it's like allegory. And the fact that the engineer is played by Ed Harris has a great deal of significance. He's always playing this certain role. That's another thing, too. We need to start documenting the archetypes, the roles that these various actors are constantly recast into, because we need to show how this predictive programming thing is not random. The same actors are used for comparable roles in movie after movie. Kevin Mooring says, have you seen where Obama's trying to film a Tiger Woods doc? I have not. What is the significance of Tiger Woods? I've heard JL talk about him. He probably has a significant birthday. You know, it's interesting. I was looking at this King Koopa Trump. So I was looking, first of all, at Elon Musk. So a couple of years ago, Elon Musk was on SNL as Wario, the evil version of Mario. This Mario Luigi character, Wario. So he's this evil villain. And I think Luigi and Wario... And, of course, we're looking at another overlapping of a fictional universe with PsyOps. Well, it turns out in the Mario Brothers movie that came out, I guess, in the 90s, it was called Super Mario Brothers. King Koopa, played by... Let me see if I can pull this up. So the character King Koopa, according to the director even, was based on Donald Trump. And he demolishes the Twin Towers in the movie. He vaporizes them. And they're called the Koopa Towers. But here we go. Bowser, King Koopa, based on Trump, Super Mario Brothers. So I kind of looked into this one. I thought there's got to be a little more to this one. And it turns out that the actor who plays him... Let's bring this up first. I mean, it's a pretty obvious physical resemblance. But when you find out that these are intentional, that's one thing. Okay, it's funny. King Koopa, the big reptile overlord of the sewers in this cartoon, is, you know, obviously based on Trump. Like, it's kind of a joke, but then you add to it that he blows up the towers. So here's the towers being blown up.
Those guys will do anything for publicity.
Those guys would do anything for publicity. He vaporizes the towers. Now, does anyone recognize King Koopa? I think his, here we go. He's the antagonist of the 1993 film. Yeah, here we go. 1993. And it's played by Dennis Hopper. So I thought, well, if Jurassic Liars was examining this, what would be the first thing he would do? He would probably go look at birthdays. So are there any connections between this big story of Trump as the main villain, Trump getting shot, any kind of connections with the dates? And, you know, he's been noting these things for some time. So I looked it up, and it turns out that Dennis Hopper has the death date of May 29th, which is JFK's birthday and also the birthday of John Hinckley Jr., who shot Reagan. John Hinckley Jr. inspired by Travis Bickle, the basis for Joker. So essentially, John Hinckley has a Joker connection kind of built into it. But anyway, yeah, he was born on JFK's birthday, which is Dennis Hopper's death day. Minor details, but when you add them up and you see how consistent it is, we're just exposing a pattern. Piano Andante says there's a Nintendo game called Luigi Mansion, like Luigi Mangione. You know, I saw that connection, and I saw the game at the mall, and I think there's something to it. And I think the game has something with a ghost gun, someone told me about, and Luigi was said to have used a ghost gun. And also want to point out, in the Madness, the gun that they use, that the Antifa on meth, it's a 3D printed gun. It's a ghost gun. And speaking of Luigi, I have a green hoodie because Luigi. All right, let's see here. Flat Bob says I prefer the earlier times. Well, good. It leaves, and I think it leaves things open for later because I'm open now to doing panel discussions. If I start early enough, 6, we have hours after. Tonight, though, we're going to be doing South Pole. We have an episode scheduled for tomorrow. It's not done. The writing's good and done. A lot of the characters are in place. The story's there, but it just needs a little time. So immediately after this live stream, we will be working on South Pole. The big theme on this one is space junk. East Coast appreciates the time slot, says AJ206. Awesome. Kevin Morin says they talk a lot about hot dogs, which was the start of Pizzagate. Oh, the Obama. Yeah, Obama says some weird things, though. Barack Obama, he was talking to Kamala Harris, and he said that Joe Biden likes to go deep in the sauce about pasta. And the way they talk about food, it's like innuendo. And I don't know. Where there's smoke, there's fire. But I think a lot of the Pizzagate stuff was some sort of a mashup of satanic panic, political witch hunts. I mean, you could find a video. No, not a video. It's a tweet with J.D. Vance from 2016, where J.D. Vance says something about, he said the shorter list is the list of people that Donald Trump has not SA'd. J.D. Vance was an anti-Trumper. Flat Bob, no, I'm going to be doing every day. The whole point was 24/7 live streams and live every day, morning, the pre-deprogram, and the evening open phones. That is the plan. And I'm working on something here as well with the other desktop computer. I would like to start the 24/7 live stream again now that I'm working on bots. And these aren't just regular bots that are spamming links and that have pre-programmed responses, but I'm integrating Grok and ChatGPT. So we're putting brains into these bots. And the idea here is that I will have some kind of integration between our live Discord chats that we're having, the live stream YouTube chat, and the bot will kind of bring people from there to behind the scenes and answer questions. And there's something else I'm working on as well, which is the IPS Institute. So one of the things too is that we're years into this thing, and in the last couple of years we've I think arrived at a lot of the right conclusions as far as establishing a model, a model for assessing media in an active way from a skeptic's perspective without falling prey to the built-in presuppositions that the media has about itself and what people have as a matter of just belief, habit. I mean, it is tantamount to a religion these days. It's become that. In fact, it's like an extreme religion these days. If you look at how people get agitated by everything that they see, how triggerable. People are programmed to be triggered. I mean, I don't even like Alex Stein very much. I don't care for his content. Kind of a side tangent here, but I was on Instagram and Alex Stein goes to these college campuses and he triggers people by making, bad kind of, I guess, meme-based jokes and just deliberately being offensive. And I'm like, well, I don't side with the people being offended. They're just so easy to be triggered, and he's just taking advantage of it. And that's pretty much what happens if you accept the mainstream view or the alternative view. You're allowing yourself to be programmed, to be triggered later. That's why I call this deprogramming. Like, everyone here, Infinite Plane Radio in early July, heard numerous conversations about a build-up towards a Trump headshot. We were talking about it up to the day before with Jurassic Liars. So when it happened, none of us were surprised. No heart rate increase. I mean, we were happy for a plot twist, but we were actually underwhelmed by the event itself. It wasn't all that impressive, visually speaking, as a spectacle. But immediately, as we expected, the propaganda rollout was very clear. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. If you haven't seen the documentary on it, the deep dive into the predictive programming for the Trump head wound thing, and it's just scratching the surface. But we're diffusing a lot of psychological operations in advance, so none of us are going to be bothered the least when they finally get around to nuking Seattle, which I think is going to happen soon. How are they going to pull it off? I have some ideas. I do not believe these things involve real deaths, but I do believe in controlled demolition. Obviously, that's something they do. Okay, but as I was saying, we want to get back into a routine, because now we're at this point where we know what we're doing, we know what we're looking at, but there's no documentation of it. There's been just so much censorship over the years. Not just being marginalized and ignored. I don't care about that. I'm not trying to breathe mainstream media air. However, because we've been playing on their platforms, they've always censored us. But now we're at the point where we need to go ahead and assemble all of the information that we have. And this is a plan we've had for some time. But we don't have the labor, the manpower, and it's not happening organically. And now that we have certain tools, now it's a certainty. Now we can just start employing these tools, and we can start building a record. And what's great about our approach here as we build out our parallel track going back in time that talks about the mainstream worldview, but also includes the stuff that they're not talking about, the stuff that would imply fakery. Everything we're doing is incredibly well documented. We have all of the documentation, all of the receipts. So here's an interesting one. Las Vegas Harvest Festival and the Thousand Oaks, California shootings. Connections between the 2017 Las Vegas shooting and the 2018 Thousand Oaks shooting. Background, we have the dates, October 1st, 2017, November 7th, 2018. One was in Las Vegas, Nevada. The other was in Thousand Oaks. Overlap in victims and survivors. Thousand Oaks, Las Vegas shooting survivor among the dead. Now, it turns out that one of the frequently cited repeat crisis actresses was at this event, Waynell. This was the one who portrayed George Floyd's preschool teacher, funnily enough. So we have this repeat character, and she shows up, and she was a victim in Vegas, and now she's a mother. She was a mother at Pulse, victim in Vegas, George Floyd's teacher. Now here she is in Thousand Oaks, mother of someone who died who survived Vegas only to die in Thousand Oaks. But when we see her, what's the theme? She's always weeping. She was the weeping mother, and I thought that's kind of an interesting characteristic. She's really good at crying. Well, it turns out that her son, who was at 2 different shootings, was named Telemachus. I'm like, where have I heard that before? The Odyssey. Telemachus is the son of Odysseus, and we've been talking about this Odyssey overlap with recent news events, specifically in space with the Calypso capsule and the 2 stranded astronauts. Why the overlap? Now, this is what we're getting into here. I'm pointing out these are things that are reported. So listen to this. Yes, there were 50 survivors of the 2017 Vegas shooting present at the 2018 Borderline Bar and Grill shooting. This was confirmed by Nicholas Champion, a Las Vegas survivor who was at Borderline, and he said that 50 to 60 people from the Harvest Festival were there. I mean, imagine being at a concert and it gets shot up. And then you go like, okay, I'm done here. You move 3 states over and it happens again. And not only does it happen again, but you're joined by 50 people who went to that terrible concert in Vegas. So the same group of people victimized twice. And this is only scratching the surface. And I haven't added the second part. The next part I'm going to add here. So this is another layer to it. We talk about the movies, the entertainment that corresponds to the fake news events. But what about the drills? Every one of these events has drills attached to it. So here's another nail in the coffin for the synchromistic explanation, for the simulation theory. They say, oh, the directors are just channeling the universe, or the simulation's directing them. These are random. Okay, well then explain the drills. Explain why the drills, like the movies, correspond to future fake news events. That there are concurrent drills almost every single time. And so what I'm doing here, what we're going to do, is we're going to take all these big fake events, and we're going to show the entertainment corresponding propaganda with conspicuously coincidental timing, and the drills. And then we get into the overlapping characters, like the chief of police at the Vegas shooting, Las Vegas Harvest Festival shooting, 2017. Chief of police shows up in Maui, so he's headlining that. He's the chief of police in Maui during that psyop, and now he's showing up again. He's been brought up in the P. Diddy stuff. Diana South says, survivor therapy groups taking a bus to another town like a traveling show. It's like that series, that movie series, Final Destination, where a group of people are going to get on a plane. They don't. So the Grim Reaper is like, uh-oh, I missed a few. And one by one, they get hunted down. And that's what's happening here. It's like, well, what's more likely? You know, is it death? The Grim Reaper stalking them, or is there something else here? There's a lot more here. I'm just showing you a few of the pages. So again, if you go to autohoax.com, or you find the wiki on the IPS website, in fact, go to the IPS.monster, and it says join the AutoHoax wiki. So the main page you go to, IPS.monster or infiniteplainsociety.com, there's a few things I want to point out here. We do have a Telegram. The Telegram has a bot that posts. It kind of posts for my other posts. It just does the work for me. I don't use Telegram very often. I don't really care for it. However, I have to use it. We need to be on everything. So we're on Telegram. The channel is Infinite Plane Radio. And the reason I'm using it is that I can automate certain functions and make it useful. So you can get live stream notifications on Telegram. You can also contact me there. Discord. We do have a Press Club Discord. And I know there's so many servers, but this one is sort of a mirror of the Telegram. It's where you post breaking news. And anything you post on Telegram or Discord will be auto-scraped and brought into a spreadsheet, and it gets into my collection of information that I put into a press release. So there's a process here. So I'm using these things. It doesn't take any time on my end. But hopefully it adds to our efficiency. And for those who are still using snail mail, the IPS Infinite Plane Society P.O. Box is on that link as well. But the AutoHoax Wiki, just getting started. And it is unearthing information that I would not have come across otherwise. Because they would memory hole this stuff. And we've been in this for 5 years. You know, I can talk about all the different roles that Robert De Niro played in terrible movies that correspond to the PSYOP in July. I can talk about James Cameron's connections to various real-time events, and we can go into the nuance of each of these events. But the public, or newbies, even people who are genuinely skeptical, aren't going to be able to grasp the concept of Metascript or news bending without information to back all of our claims. Well, here it is. And before it can be memory holed, we're getting it all put into one centralized place. Conspiracy theories around Tupac's death and his alleged connection to Akil the MC. So I'm not asserting these things, I'm documenting them. We're not going to get banned for this. The Akil MC connection. And there are chronological impossibilities brought up here, but I'm addressing every major conspiracy theory. And we're going to do a special take on every single director and list their movies and which movies contained predictive programming, which movies seem to have involved this particular director perhaps as some kind of, again, propaganda agent for the government. Because that's what we're looking at here. All right, let's go through my minds.com. Joe Saunter says, I think that's why they said game over at the halftime show, because nobody can see the Metascript. Yeah, Jurassic Liars just went live. Awesome. I sent him a message the other day. I'll probably get to it. There was something we had come across. Tonight is the blood moon eclipse. It'll be visible across America, Central and South America, Western Africa, Europe, New Zealand, and parts of Russia. It will peak at about 3 in the morning, March 14th, so the pi connection. Says the moon will glow red for approximately 1 hour to 3 hours, depending where you are. But anyway, blood moon tonight. And wasn't Donald Trump... Yeah, that's right. It is believed... Oh, see, Trump was born on a blood moon eclipse in 1946 on Flag Day, which is June 16th. So there's some significance here. Now, this is kind of deep into the Metascript. But a couple of things. Flag Day and the significance of the national anthem in the dialectic between 1619 and 1776. And this ties into the Blackout Bowl, the 33 minutes of darkness, when Colin Kaepernick was quarterback before he started kneeling during the national anthem. But a couple of things have come up. The Flag Day is significant for Trump. I'm pretty sure 6/14 was chosen for a lot of reasons having to do with nationalism. But what's more, because in a lot of these various examples of what we're describing here, there's often this relationship between Trump and Obama in the subtexts. So, for example, in Megalopolis, the Trump character is nearly killed. There's an assassin set on him by the Obama character. In Homelander, the Obama-esque character, Edgar, the CEO, orchestrates the downfall of this character. It's a repeated pattern. But it's interesting because it turns out that Trump really jumped onto the world stage in politics with the birth certificate issue. So you have Barack Obama's birth certificate and the legitimacy of his birth location called into question by Trump, who then became a big figure in the Tea Party, which then later became MAGA. So the birth date of Obama has been heavily emphasized throughout this script. And then it's been this back and forth between the two. And the significance of Obama's August 4th birth date has to do with this deeper level of connections that we pick up that JL talks about in particular. Verkjun, just send me an email and I'll have it sent out now. I have a stack of press passes here. If it hasn't arrived, either I have the shipping label and it hasn't gone out yet, or I don't know. If the USPS loses anything, I just send a second one. No big deal. And press passes are going to become increasingly relevant, especially as we get into a riot season, which I think is coming. Okay, so the connection, though, with the Obama-Trump thing is something we've talked about pretty often. But what drew my attention to it was the actor. There's an actor that he's in The Boys, who opposes the Homelander. He's in Megalopolis, who opposes Caesar, who's Trump. And the same actor is Sidewinder, who is the antagonist of the Red Hulk, who represents Trump. Same actor, Giancarlo Esposito. So the same actor is in the same subtextual role in multiple movies. And he's a stand-in for Obama. And in the past, he has in fact played a role where he was basically cast as an Obama-turned-tyrant. And when Jurassic Liars talks about Obama, I used to say, why is he talking about Obama? The guy hasn't been relevant in years. But then that all changed pretty rapidly, and the connections have been pretty consistent. The August 4th, 8/4, the 216th day of the year, is a big part of the code here. There's a number of dates that are and numbers that are consistent, and their application is consistent. So, for example, he's repeatedly pointed out 6/11 and 8/4 with regard to this Trump-Obama thing. Interestingly enough, Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. 84 days later, he goes back to Butler. So there's a couple of things here as well. There's a correlation between the storyline of the Trump head wound and the nuking of Seattle and a blackout. So these are two events that are constantly correlated. So here's another. I talked about Adam Driver. Adam Driver, who I mentioned here, was reacting to the white noise connections to the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment. Well, that train derailment was accompanied by a big mushroom cloud, a toxic airborne event. White noise was about a toxic airborne event after a train derailment. So you have this parallel story, but it gets deeper because Adam Driver is the face of white noise. He's also the face of Megalopolis. So in Megalopolis, he's representing Trump, and he gets shot. In white noise, he's associated with this mushroom cloud thing. And East Palestine and Butler, Pennsylvania, where Trump was shot, 42 miles apart. And the two places had been talked about with regard to their significance to the electorate. Great value, Keanu. Yeah, when I saw Adam Driver in Megalopolis, I said, this guy looks like Keanu Reeves. And the more I looked into it, the more it made sense. It's intentional. There's another storyline here involving the Matrix. So Lawrence Fishburne is the driver of Caesar. They drive around. It's always raining with green light. Looks like the Matrix. And Fishburne's character is always telling Adam Driver's character, Caesar, about the mysteries of time and time control and history. And he sounds like Morpheus, instructing the neophyte. Well, in the Matrix, he was doing the same thing, only he was describing the nature of the matrix, of space, of matter. So time and space. So Adam Driver was made to look like Neo on purpose. And then, of course, Neo has all sorts of connections to 9/11, the Matrix, that is. You know, the passport. He jumped off the building. Numerous connections here. Also notable, he was in the movie The Matrix was an inspiration for the Littleton shooters as far as their style. There was a lot of connections made between the two. And Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris, I think Dylan Klebold was born on a 9/11, which is not a coincidence. Well, I mean, that's probably not his real birth date. But the fascinating thing here is just the connection between the actors and the propaganda messaging they bring. And the significance of passports on 9/11. In The Matrix, he has a passport that expired on 9/11. So there's just layers to the stuff. But anyway, my point is, Adam Driver in Megalopolis, therefore, brings Neo into the story. And therefore, 9/11. Well, the movie was postponed for 20 years because of 9/11. Coppola changed the script in a few ways because of 9/11. And he included footage from 9/11 2001 because he was working on the movie that day at the end of the movie. So there's just so many layers here of... It's like it's clear to me that Francis Ford Coppola was likely tasked with creating a predictive programming movie for 9/11, and either it didn't make it out on time, or the plan all along was to release it later. But I don't know. I kind of think it could have been something that was meant to have come out sooner. There's so many movies that were altered because they came out after the fact. Look at Collateral Damage. That's another area of research. How many movies changed because of events they foreshadowed? So another term to use here is foreshadowing. We're actually looking at foreshadowing. The propaganda format is essentially the literary technique of foreshadowing. But it's also real-time, concurrent, because it's creating an echo chamber. Manipulated Living 42 says Adam Driver plays the dark side Sith in Star, who assassinates his master. Well, this Megalopolis movie's a lot to take in. It's just a big, like almost just a data dump of symbols and words, and it's noisy. It's visually noisy. I mean, I wouldn't have watched it if I didn't know what it was. But it's intriguing because it incorporates so many elements. They incorporated this group of people, this shadowy group called the Design Authority. And I think the Design Authority are the Metascripters. When we talk about the PSYOP entertainment complex, who's behind it, who decides when this city is going to get bombed and when we're going to lock down the world, it's the Design Authority. And in Megalopolis, it starts out where he's on top of a building and it's got a clock on it, which immediately would make you think of Dark City, where you have the person walking on the clock. And the Design Authority look like the strangers, the ones who control time in Dark City. And the clock, Chronos, Saturn, time, the symbolism's all there. You have Adam Driver on the roof looking through a hexagon. I'm sorry, it's a hexagonal plate. He's looking through it. So there's a lot of Saturnian stuff. But the Design Authority show up dressed in black with black brimmed hats, and they stop time. And if you think about it, the ones who are behind these big psychological events, perception management, writing our history in advance, they control time. They control time and space. They look like Jesuits in the Dark City, says Braveheart84. Yeah, and that's probably not unintentional. I mean, I don't say that there's any one particular group you could point a finger at and say they control everything, but there's been some recent research pointed out to me by Leo Pirate, who's called in about it, having to do with Jesuit theater and special effects. Special effects even involving actors falling from buildings or falling from heights, and it's a dummy filled with meat, so the dogs attack it, or eat it after. They had examples of people burning themselves or being immolated, but they were actually wearing some kind of garments that protect them 400 years ago. So I had this debate. This has been ongoing with a couple of ISS believers. So this is Michael Witkowski. And so we've had this back and forth, and this has been going on for months, and they kind of brought it back. And the gist of it is this. They're showing me a video of astronauts doing somersaults. And I'm asking them, is it your contention that this could only be performed in outer space with zero G? Could this be faked with movie magic? And it takes me about 10 or 20 tweets back and forth to get them to answer yes or no. Like they don't want to say. Which is interesting to me that they just can't say, no, this could not be done on Earth. This had to have been in space. No, they can't say that. They just attack me. They say, well, they shift the burden of proof to me. So this is a chronic issue, this burden of proof question. So anyway, he says, finally, I got this guy to agree that what we're seeing with the Skylab in particular could only have been done in space. So I got him to finally agree to it. So for context, here's a video from Skylab. And this guy tweeted it with the caption, "Look, space is real, boys." And it has a man doing somersaults. He looks like he's in one of those gerbil toys where they just run indefinitely. So there you have it. Evidence of space. There's somebody else floating by. Now, I had to work hard to get Mordwand42 to commit to his assertion that this could only be done in space. So I said, is your argument that this only could have been done in zero G? Do you believe this is outside the capabilities of film directors of the day in the science fiction genre? And instead of saying yes, he said, describe how, with a stupid emoji. And look, I don't think that emotional people should be involved in serious discourse or debates. If you're throwing emojis, it's not nothing. I mean, okay, so the smile emoji, when he says describe how it could be faked, one, he's smug. He's confident that the special effects of the 1970s couldn't have done that. But it doesn't add to it. But he's shifting the burden of proof to me. And this was a burden that NASA never met, in my opinion. So he's taking the burden of proof onto himself. I believe it because I saw it on TV, and then he's offering that as evidence. It doesn't work. You accepted a burden of proof that wasn't yours, logically speaking. You can't then make it my burden as well. So what he said to me is, I don't know of any method to simulate this in 1973. If you can provide a method or evidence of fakery, I will consider it. So I have to provide evidence to convince him that it's fake. Again, this is not how honest debates take place. If he was really serious about this information, he would do a deep dive into special effects himself. If you can find evidence, I will consider it. Why not contact somebody in a special effects department? Why me? And this is the widespread fundamental misunderstanding about the burden of proof and who owns it. This is how I think a lot of bad information gets spread, is because people just wrongly take it upon themselves to say, I can't disprove it, so I'm just going to assume it to be true. And I'm comparing this to a magic show. And, you know, I imagine if you went to a magic show with somebody like this, they walk out with their jaws dropping, assuming it's all real. Because if they can't tell how it's fake, it must be magic, right? So his argument essentially comes down to that. If you can't tell me how it's fake, I'm going to believe it's real. Well, here's a video from Royal Wedding with Fred Astaire. And this is from I think it's 51. So we're talking more than 20 years before Skylab. We have Fred Astaire dancing on the walls and on the ceiling. And I also checked out this movie set for a Little Richie dancing on the ceiling. So what you're seeing here on the left is what the audiences saw on the screen. And if you're a NASA fanboy, you must have concluded he's in outer space, because of what he's doing is so impossible. He's jumping on the walls. He's like levitating. But if you look on the right, you learn that, in fact, the camera is filming a rotating movie set. It's just this massive wheel, like a hamster wheel. And the hamster wheel rotates as he goes through his choreographed dance. But if you're just looking at the screen through that selective view, you would have to conclude magic or space or zero-G. So we're talking 20 years before Skylab. So my main comment here was about fakeability. Was Skylab fakeable by the special effects of the time? And his answer was no. Could not be faked. Well, actually, yeah, it could have been. In fact, space fakery is better in movies than in real life. Like, what they present as real, zero-G, looks faker than what they do in the movies all the time. That's a problem. It's a huge problem. It's a major discrepancy, and it's why I say that there's an issue having Tom Cruise filming a movie up at the space station. Obreek says, like when a magician plays a card trick, even if we don't know how he performed it, it's not actually magic. Yeah, so their default is, if I can't tell how that trick is performed, it's magic. Well, no, if one of them is fake, they're all fake. If one of those things he does on the stage is merely a sleight of hand, there's no reason to assume that magic's going to follow. And we have seen enough fakery on the ISS with NASA and SpaceX in general that none of it's real. And this is what people miss. They'll say, yeah, that's fake. That's obviously fake. But the next thing might be real. Or maybe they faked the moon landing, but space travel is real. No, it doesn't work that way. Braveheart says, he can't prove how Chris Angel walked down the side of a building, loser. Well, this is the thing. They're chastising me for not believing. And I'm like, I'm a proud non-believer. I do not believe. I'm a non-believer. Burn me. Chop off my head. Throw rocks. Whatever you got to do if you're a MSM fundamentalist to the non-believer. And I will never be a believer. Like, I'm not suddenly going to say, I'm tired of thinking about this critically. I'm just going to believe bullshit. That's never going to happen with me. we have to move away from being believers. Believers are tools. They're dupes. They're marks. It's okay to just wait until you have enough information to affirmatively state that you know something, or you know enough not to believe. I'm not a low info disbeliever. I have a problem with low info belief and low info disbelief. We take the stance of the informed disbeliever. Like, we know why we don't believe what you guys believe, and it's because we have more information. And it's that more information, which they are ignorant of, that makes the difference. There's a reason we don't believe. It's not irrational. What we're doing here is purely reasonable. Obrick says they use that rotating moving room. Oh yes, in 2001 Space Odyssey when David Bowman's jogging. It's like a giant hamster wheel. So these individuals, they're naive, they're gullible, they're intransigent, but they're believers. That's the main point. And I think it's also important here to recognize that if one thing is fake, it has implications for everything else. It's like dominoes. You can't just look at one fake thing in isolation. There are people who are mad about, oh, they faked this event, or this was a psyop, but they think everything else was real. And sorry, you haven't got out of the forest of fakery. It's like, wake up, they're all fake. Every single tree in the forest is fake. But you have these agents who are paid to get everyone running loops around one or two big fake trees every few years. And everyone's preoccupied with proving that this one is fake, and nobody believes them. But it's like, no, the whole forest is fake. You got to clear cut it. And right now, what we're doing at IPS is we are in the process of clear cutting the forest of fakery. And we were described by the Daily Beast as clear cutting a forest of information. They said that's exactly what we were doing, and they said it like it was a bad thing. Yes, the Infinite Plane Society is clear cutting the forest of information. It's like, yeah, because we have examined it and we know what it is down to the roots. So if you see images of armies of cyborg penguins with chainsaws, that's the meaning of it here. So here's a penguin with a chainsaw. It says autohoaxology, and the tree is labeled fake. And once you grasp that the fakery is not anomalous, it's not a tactic, but it's the strategy, it's the main strategy. Once you grasp that the PSYOP entertainment complex is the main conspiracy here, everything else falls into place. The military-industrial complex is a subset of that, and it's not really doing any of the things that the truthers are told to believe, or even normies. The secret space program doesn't exist. There's not some kind of secret technology that's far more advanced, which is a common talking point among the conspiracy theorists. No, the secret is that the space program is fake. And moreover, that the space program isn't just about faking space to get a bunch of money and advance certain agendas, but the space program is not separate from the worldview formation processes engaged by the media. So they're the same mind control. I often say space is just a metaphor for the space between your ears. It's about worldview warfare. And when they showed you the globe, they showed you the game board, the closed system of information. Smarty Pants says, auto-hoaxing internet videos is about to go mainstream now because we're actually warning each other about AI now. Well, the AI phobia is fascinating because what you have is people who are afraid of it. They think it's sentient. And just to be clear, it's no more sentient than a magic 8-ball. It's just a automated information processing application that's just so sophisticated and fast that it appears to be intelligent. Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic, but it doesn't mean it's magic. We're looking at a magic show, and AI is obviously something that's been foreshadowed ever since even, well, we talked about Space Odyssey, HAL 9000. But even Newsbenders, which came out in 1968, Newsbenders, 30-minute theater, they said ultimately the fake news that was written about 5 years in advance was being produced by a supercomputer. And there's a book I referenced, I should put it up for sale on eBay if anyone wants to read it, called The Country of the Blind by Michael Flynn, about a small group of people who have a supercomputer they developed, and then they took over the control of news media and wrote history in advance, basically, like what we're talking about, with the aid of a supercomputer. And what's interesting about this one is that the creators of the supercomputer wrote its existence out of history. They concealed it, and it was a small group of people who were controlling world events and capitalizing on this knowledge. If you haven't seen the book or looked into it, In the Country of the Blind, Michael Flynn, it came out in the 80s. And what's intriguing about it is that the main character is someone kind of like one of us. She's getting to journalism, and she discovers this stuff. She gets some kind of a folder, and she finds out about this secret society and how they're able to bend the news. And this group sends out killers to take out everybody who finds out. So she's dodging all kinds of assassins and eventually gets recruited into the club. But she gets the information, and it's called the Q file. And she drops this Q file off. She faxes it around the world. When the public finds out who's been doing this, who's been behind the scripting of their reality, mobs form. And these individuals are hunted down as they are named. Which is fascinating because the whole Q story was about this big expose, and the culprits would not be able to walk around in public. And what's also notable is the author's name, Michael Flynn. Like General Flynn. It gets even stranger because the cover art on In the Country of the Blind has a man with an eye patch. And behind him, a mushroom cloud. So, overlapping coincidences. And I only found the book because I was passing by a Goodwill, and I'm listening to a podcast about Michael Flynn, and I see his name on a book. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I pick up the book, and this was around the time that I started really syncing together these ideas, that the synchronization between entertainment and the news bending and the fake news, that it's all monolithic, that it's all centrally controlled. Smarty Pants says that image needs to go permanently in the corner by the phone number as the agent standing by to cut the trees. A fake, I should have because there are, someone asked me about my junk hauling business. There are people here who haul trees. There should be a fake tree hauling business. Mostly I've just hauled leaves. I haven't really expanded beyond that. Putting business cards up. But my side business, it's Haul 9000, and it does have a space junk theme. I mean, the idea is that I'm trying to clear space if you have a lot of junk. So Haul 9000 junk hauling service, and I've used all kinds of astronauts on the moon with dump trucks. Joe Saunders says War Games is about a supercomputer playing a game. So War Games has a lot of predictive programming for Seattle, Nuke, 311 stuff, 113 stuff. And additionally, the tagline, strange game, the only winning move is not to play. I use that in Autohoaxology 101 because the world stage closed informational system, the political horseshoe, it is an alternate reality game. And the instant you're playing, you lose. It's a losing game. You can't win from within. It's a loser's game. I'm sorry to say it, but you're a pawn. You're a dupe. You're a mark. You're a resource. You're a louche battery. I'll put that image on a shirt. So if you go to inciter.shop, it's where we're selling the tabloid, and I'm preparing to do issue number 2 this month. We're going to have some content from Bach Precision. He interviewed me. I'm translating that. I'm transcribing it. We're going to have some stuff from mindwar.page, Leo Pirate, And hopefully, I'm going to take some excerpts from South Pole and turn it into a comic strip. But the new issue of Insider.shop. And if I put this fake tree penguin on a shirt, that's where it will show up. So Inciter, INCITER.shop. And this is where press passes are. I'm going to have to send a couple out today. We have the IPS metal cutout design. We have the anti coffee mug. Press passes, right now it says sold out. I'm going to add a couple more once I send the ones that were late. I have Autohoaxology 101. Oh, it's sold out. So I am going to do a third edition of Autohoaxology to add a lot of content, things that we've come up with since the publication of this one. And I'm also revamping something. I created a course a little while ago on Teachable so that people who are new to this can go from kindergarten to a college level understanding of what we mean when we say psyops or media fakery, but in a short amount of time. And I think that the breakdown of Autohoaxology 101 into a course makes a lot of sense. So I'm revamping my course for the IPS Institute for Media Deconstruction, and this is our basic textbook. But I don't have any more copies of it, but you can get it on Amazon. But I'm presently working on a follow-up. Jackie Star says, haven't seen my shirt from TeePublic. I saw your email. And I was surprised because I didn't even know I had any open stores left on Teespring or TeePublic. But I contacted them and they said if I didn't place the order, they can't tell me anything about a third party's purchase. But what you can do is you can email their customer service for a refund. So again, I saw your email. I'm sorry they didn't get it to you, but that's really a third-party printer. What I'm doing is I source my shirts now from Amazon, and I'll be storing them here in-house so I can ship directly. But I'll check again, Jackie Star, on your shirts, and I'll help you get a refund if it helps. I'll send them an email, and then if they don't have a way of getting that shirt, I'll put the design on my own store. Okay, I'll send out a newsletter when I have more passes available. Again, the Insider issue number 1 sold out quick, and I had a lot of people who had made orders in September, October that I had to fulfill first, so not many were available for purchase. I am going to order some new ones, and the new ones will have a couple of improvements, and then issue 2 will also be ordered in the same batch. Issue 2 is going to feature a story about Garrett Ziegler and Cat Doe, likely on the cover. I also want to put Duff. The final experiment is going to be covered in issue 2. For example, the shape traders. I have a whole story on shape traders. And I have nothing against people making up their own minds. But I think there's something a little, I don't know, something's off. Something's off with regard to a certain collection of prominent, well-publicized flag, like Paul on the Ball, for example. We had talked about Paul on the Ball the other day. Robbie Davidson. And one of the common denominators with all these individuals is they all kind of jumped ship at the same time. Like, what would make that happen? What would cause all these individuals to just change their mind all at once? But moreover, all these individuals had disappeared for a little while, and they got into cryptocurrency. So we have all these individuals who were flat Earth, and now they're crypto Earthers, and they're pushing something called Axion. So what you do is you take your life savings, and you put it into this cryptocurrency. Put all your hopes and dreams into it. Forget college. Forget baby formula. Just whatever it is, just throw it all. Your priority should be crypto, according to them, because they're hyping it up. So these people are putting all of their stuff into this crypto called Axion, and what happens with it? Well, they're told that at some point it's going to appreciate, that the value is going to go up. That's what we're supposed to believe with these things. But what the truth of it is The people who are hyping it and getting, quote, investors are actually just funneling the money from the people that they're encouraging into the hands of whoever created it. So it's all just, you're just throwing money into a hole, or onto, it's a pyramid scheme in a sense, but the people at the bottom who are making the bigger investments are not going to suddenly see that money blow up. What happens is the opposite. It's a rug pull. Well, Infinite Jack sent me a message and he showed me that, yeah, that exact coin that Paul on the Plane, Paul on the Ball, Robbie Davidson, and the others, the same coin that they were all promoting, zeroed out. Nobody won. But my point here is that how do they all get into the same thing at the same time and then exit the flat earth at the same time? Like, they're all operating in sync. So I'm wondering who's pulling their strings. There's got to be some kind of organization behind it. Not sure who or what, but there's no way that they're all arriving at the conclusions with almost like they're copy pasting their resignation letters. Joe Santos says, if you're still on flat earth, it's like using $2 bills. Well, the thing is, we're talking about not so much the shape of the world, but how you get that information. And if you're going to agree with the conventional model, you have to know what you're signing on to. So you may say, I believe I'm on a ball because it's the best model to describe observed phenomenon. I'm down with heliocentrism. That's all fine with me. Cool. But space fakery invalidates the completeness of your model. You cannot assert your globe is a complete model if you can't tell us what's in outer space. And what's in outer space has been consistently augmented with science fiction and special effects. So it may very well be a ball, but the ball that you're shown from space is fake, which means they're lying about something. Geography, Mount Meru on the North Pole. What are they hiding? Atlantis? Unless you trust them. Like, they lie about everything else, history, the news, but we can trust them when it comes to cartography. Yeah, sure. The only thing that matters, resources. That's the main thing they would be lying about. Does anybody here know who Brian Krasenstein is? Ed Krasenstein and Brian Krasenstein, they're a couple of twins on X who have irrelevant opinions, but they get super promoted. They're huge. Anyway, this guy followed me today. I don't know why, so I blocked him. Joe Rogan is a follower on my Twitter account, and I realize they got thousands of followers, but anyway, I don't know why. I just think it's ominous. It's like, why is this individual following me? Okay, continuing here. If you want to get into Telegram or the new Discord server, just go to the IPS website. No big deal. Joe Santos says, these people do flat earth debates for 10 years. Yeah, let me point this out. Flat earthers are just as bad as globe earthers. They're making the same mistake. They're making the same error. And what is the error? Assuming the completeness of their model. And science is open-ended. It's open-ended skeptical inquiry. We shouldn't be arguing from a presumption of completeness. It's even the accepted model today with the sun 93 million miles away. It's a work in progress. It didn't just appear one day in completeness, and it's still not done. And we're talking about competing explanations for the big picture, and my contention is that there's a monopoly on worldview, and our view of the world has been, I guess, interpreted through a certain lens. And the pathological liars that construct our worldview are also behind it. So why trust it? So I think the best you can argue here is that you can believe you're on a globe, you can believe it's a flat earth, but what do you know? Well, all you know is what you've experienced. And have you experienced the curve? The answer is no. You would be a curvert. Now, you might accept the existence of the curve. That's a different issue altogether. And of course, we have to be able to think abstractly because we can't obviously perceive everything. We're very limited beings. But when we're getting our information from what constitutes an information monopoly, we should be skeptical of it. The fact of where's the moon on the moon landing videos? You got astronauts walking on the moon, like Neil Armstrong, who was paid $33 to go to the moon. Side note, Lloyd posted this. His name is Nort's Mr. Alien, if you look at it backward. And, Neil Armstrong performed the Catholic Mass of the Eucharist on the moon. People don't talk about that often. I heard that the astronauts did Masonic rituals on the moon. I could never verify that, but you can verify that he took out bread and wine and a chalice on the moon, if you want to believe it. But when you go and look at these videos of the astronauts on the moon, where is it? It's like it disappears 100 yards away. There isn't a lunar plain of craters. Where's the moonscape? There isn't one. Grant Erickson has joined us as Infinite Gang. Thanks for joining. Flat Bob says, definitely not a ball. Too many discrepancies with the ball model. It's filled with assumptions, presuppositions, baseless assertions. Yeah, and another reason why I don't fully accept it is that the ball model is not inclusive of co-creation or sentient beings being the center of it. And I'm not trying to get into mysticism or spirituality necessarily, but the model as it's been presented shows mankind as latecomers. We evolved. And I'm not against evolution either. But the idea that we are evolved apes with big egos that are just latecomers to the scene and this thing will continue without us. Like, that's one of the built-in assumptions to the ball model. And I kind of disagree with that. I entirely disagree. And I'm not a simulationist, but I think we live in a cybernetic system and we don't have enough information to have a complete model. There's more to the world than just the material. So it's premature to assume a model. And what difference does it make? Well, the difference is if you go with the globe model, you're accepting certain constraints. You're accepting scarcity. You're accepting various doomsday propositions built into it. Planet killer asteroids, the universe collapsing, alien invasions. How many different ways can we be destroyed because of Earth being so fragile in this infinite void? So really our question, when we talk about flat versus round, we're asking the same question. What's at the edge? Or we're asking, what is this place? The universe, the big picture. But the people who've accepted the ball prematurely believe we're on a ball and there's this vast distance to the universe, and what's at the edge, they don't know. They don't know what's at the edge of the universe. So then they say to the person who says the earth is flat, what's at the edge? And they laugh. But I'm saying these are the same question. The difference is the people who don't believe the ball say that their ignorance begins much closer, that we don't actually believe in this, quote, space. The people who believe in the space have accepted that explanation, and therefore their questions have been answered for the first few trillion light years. So I'm just saying that the premature acceptance of a model cuts off curiosity with a false explanation. And it rules out possibilities. It rules out the possibility that this may be a biocentric, maybe panpsychism, maybe there's something bigger here. But again, the model question is irrelevant. Flat, round, either or fallacy. It's like, oh, if you can't prove that it's a flat disk under a dome accelerating 32 feet per second, you must therefore accept everything else. No. No, I'm still ambivalent. That's why I didn't have to put out a letter like all these others did. Like Paul on the Plane and Robbie Davidson and others. I didn't have to come out and say, hey guys, I no longer believe this, because I was never a believer. It's like, good for you. You dropped that belief, but if now you're a believer in the ball, bad for you. Ball earthers and flat earthers are in the same clown car. Truth Faction says, Patty just got a new car. Mark Sargent says it was a $150,000 car. I heard from Level Earth Observer that Mark Sargent is saying, no, somebody had said that, Mark Sargent had suggested that Jeranism had sold out in some way. But Level Earth Observer had some interesting things to say about Jaron and others. Joe Santos says, people have to feel like they know everything. It's literally insane. Yeah, so here's the thing. The false explanations are thought blockers. They block you from going down certain paths. And what I'm suggesting is that you shouldn't be afraid of question marks. You should be fine with questions. It shouldn't bother you to have doubts and have unanswered questions. So you shouldn't be afraid to say, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm fine with that. But my I don't know isn't I don't know and I'm ignoring what is known. That's an appeal to ignorance, and that's not tenable. I'm more like, I'm informed as to why I don't believe something, but if there's evidence that suggests that the official explanation is true, it's incumbent upon me to look at it. And that's what the final experiment was meant to accomplish. It was meant to be an observation, which it did. I mean, honestly, they did accomplish one thing. They destroyed the straw man model. Just as I said that the globe Earth cannot be considered a complete model until everything about space is, the space fakery is explained away, the flat Earth model was never complete. So going to the South Pole and recording a 24-hour sun gets rid of a certain concept of a complete model of a flat world, a flat universe, or whatever. But it doesn't change anything. They burned a straw man. Like, I'm shape ambivalent. It's not my main concern. So Jaron's anti-flat Earth now. So Jaron should have gone from flat Earth believer to shape agnostic, but I still don't believe the ball for the following reasons. Not, this has been debunked, so now I'm a baller. That's why I called him a shape trader. Roxy W says, I was thinking Jaronism might be expecting another baby and needed the money. That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't think these individuals are being bought off, but you know, I know Witsit Gets It needed the money, and where's he been? So Witsit Spits It, if you looked into his terrible domestic abuse record, Witsit Gets It had raised money to audit NASA. What happened to that? Nobody knows. Where'd that money go? Nobody knows. But Jaronism also participated in ISS transit videos, which are all fake. Prove me wrong on this. A lot of people say, I saw the ISS. Yeah, you saw a light over the airport. Like, just stop. Unless you have full information, including metadata and multiple observers 50 miles apart. Transits don't count. Then he participated in Netflix, which made headlines about how he proved the Earth was a ball with a laser pen on some street at night, which is preposterous. So I kind of think that these individuals, I'm talking about these crypto shills and flat Earth shills who pushed the model, they might actually just be paid agents to sabotage the conversation with a false dichotomy. Obreek says, Witsit argues for Trump on modern day debate. Yeah, I never took him seriously because his debating tactics were really good. And he's very well versed in logical fallacies. And he uses these in these flat Earth debates. But if you listen to him, sometimes he uses them dishonestly. I think he can be accused of employing the fallacy. But more importantly, he doesn't assess other news with that same logical framework. So he's like, here's how I know I don't trust the scientists on this matter because of this. But then he believes other stuff. And I brought up the question of chemtrails to him because I said, you can't believe in chemtrails if you understand the loaded question fallacy. If you understand the appeal to ignorance fallacy, which he does. But I brought it up to him and he said, no, he believes in chemtrails. So that doesn't make sense. It's inconsistent. So it almost seems like these individuals were paid to participate in a false dialectic that was always going to lead to this conclusion. And so Jaron being anti-flat Earth, it's like, okay, fine, but is he anti-skeptic now? Seems like it, because the only reason why people become, quote, flat earthers is they're engaging in skepticism. Now, if they remain flat earthers, it's because they haven't really come to appreciate the scientific method and what agnosticism or skepticism allows you to do, which is suspend judgment. You don't have to know everything today. Plain Dakota says Nathan Oakley and Quantum Eraser are goat flat earthers. Well, Nathan Oakley is a domer, but he's a domer who won't say dome, and that bothers me. I remember I talked to him about this, and he's got this tactic where he'll talk over you. I'm like, you can't prove there's a dome, and he says you can't have a pressure system without a container. I know, but are you saying there's a dome? And instead of saying yes or no, because he's implying there's a dome, he says, on repeat, you can't have a pressure system without a container, which isn't explicitly true. But he's been hammering the same point year after year, and I've never heard Nathan Oakley take down any big media fakery event and describe it in detail as totally fake. And if you don't know about fake news, I don't care what you think about the shape of the world. That's why the opinions of McToon, Fight the Flat Earth, Simon Dan, none of these individuals are relevant to me because they're MSM. They're mainstream mediated true believers. Their standards of evidence are super low, and they're defending the dominant paradigm. Like, that's something to be lauded. It's like, okay, you're just basically an advocate for big lies. Obreek says Oakley is all about optics when he debates, doesn't debate in good faith. Yeah, if you're not at the point where you figured out what media is and now you're looking at the deeper underlying metascript and news bending and what fake news means, it's irrelevant. So yeah, flat earthers are just as irrelevant to me as gloobers. Good point. Dr. Bass Ackworth says if the accepted model is true, they wouldn't have to fake space. If the ISS was really up there, they could prove it flippantly, easily, casually, in a million different ways. There are things they, like, the illusion is given away by what they don't show you, oftentimes. Look at a magic show, for example. To use that analogy, you're sitting in your seats, you're looking at the magician. From your perspective, you can't see backstage. You can't see below the stage. You can't see what he sees. What the spotlight focuses on isn't what's really performing the illusion. So you don't have enough information from where you sit to debunk everything. And when it comes to something like the space station, we're only shown a minimalistic version of it that doesn't offer very much. There's not enough to even say it's real, and they don't leave you enough information that would perhaps, like, I guess, for example, we see them with a stationary camera. They're waving at the camera. They're dangling. Sometimes one of them turns upside down, and their forehead veins bulge. Remember Veingate? So we see these things, but what do we not see? Well, I'd like to know, and I pointed this out. I said, where are these guys shaving every day? How much water are they consuming for that? Where are they plucking their eyebrows, getting makeup and Botox and hair dye? We've noticed these things happening on the ISS that can only be the result of a production studio preparing their actors to look good on camera. But what we don't see are things like, let's say you had an iPhone, and you took an iPhone, you hit record, and you threw it to the space station. What would you see? You know, you would see this phone twirling around, maybe rapidly, maybe not, but you would see a 360 view. You'd see above the astronauts, below the astronauts, behind them. But we don't have any view like that. It's always a stationary camera. It's always totally contrived. But years ago, they used to use handheld cameras. On 9/11/2001, there was an astronaut in the ISS who had a handheld camera recording New York. And he's like, oh my, it looks like a terror attack. Must have been Osama bin Laden. So he's up there listening to an audiobook of Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears. And he claims that he saw Manhattan from space, and he's recording it with his handheld camera. And he claims that this is just like what happened in the book. I'll do a video breakdown of the space station on 9/11 because back then they used a handheld camera, and it was so much faker. We have another good example of astronauts in the space shuttle dropping one of their tanks off, one of the big red booster tanks. And so you're watching the booster tank fall into the ocean. But it's taking forever. And it's keeping track with them somehow. The space shuttle's moving at this tremendous speed, and somehow you still have this red tank just sort of right behind them, right beneath them, and they're just recording with the handheld camera. Well, what's interesting is at the end of that video, you see an F-16 zip by with some kind of wire behind it. And it's mostly whited out in the video, but you can see it. And then they cut the feed. So what did we see? Well, what's given away with the handheld camera is that the astronauts are actually stationary and they're on the ground. And they're not recording the ocean as seen from 200 miles above. They're recording the clouds and the blue sky. It's an optical illusion, and it looks like you're seeing the ocean beneath the clouds, but you're seeing the sky behind the clouds. And the tank that they dropped was actually a blimp ascending. And the plane was a blimp recovery plane. So the space station, the space shuttles, the entire thing has been nothing but magic tricks, angles, perspectives, optical illusion. Flat Bob says, has FEF died? Haven't seen him in a while. Who's FEF? Which one is that? Obrick says, gas pressure gradient decreases as you go up. Surely it gets to a point of 0. Yeah, and in this model, as they explain it, there's sort of this area where the atmosphere and space, it's not like a hard barrier, but they say our atmosphere kind of trails behind. Like a residual atmosphere, they call it. All right, see you later, Flat Bob. Thanks for joining. Oh, Breck says Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin doppelganger. Yes, Yuri Gagarin is Neil Armstrong. Gagarin died a mysterious, fiery death. They couldn't find his body. They identified him by a piece of skin that had a mole on it from his neck, according to the story. So Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space. And he went up to space. He landed at some rural area, walks into onto a farm, and some girl says to him, "Did you come from outer space?" It's a story that's been, told many times. But then he dies later, and Neil Armstrong emerges on the scene, who looks exactly like him, and he becomes the first man on the moon. So similar historic role. Interestingly, Top Gun 2 opens up in the opening scenes. Tom Cruise's character gets on this experimental plane, and he goes Mach 10 over the ballage of the Earth, as they call it, and they laugh for some reason. But in that scene, he lands in a rural area after going Mach 10, and he walks into a diner, and people ask him if he came from space. But in that trip, he looked like Yuri Gagarin. It was almost like they recreated the first man in space in the opening scenes of Top Gun 2, which is highly significant if you look at the role Tom Cruise plays on the world stage. He's a big part of the space program, this whole narrative. It's not insignificant that Eyes Wide Shut was directed by Stanley Kubrick, nor is it a coincidence that Kubrick's daughter Vivian is a Scientologist. Flat Bob says, oh, Flat Earth Fridays. It was a weekly stream on Twitter. Okay. So I'm interested in turning the 24/7 stream back on, but I want it to be integrated with Discord and a bot. And I want to have some kind of, like I said, panel conversations. And it would be useful to talk to a lot of people and get their reactions from the final experiment. Steve Vasilev, CNN fact-checked if Zelensky had thanked us. Turns out he thanked us 33 times, and then 33 world leaders pledged support for him. Yes, CNN fact check. 33 times Zelensky thanked Americans and expressed gratitude toward the U.S. Thank you for that fact check. I mean, that's another indicator here. And we saw this very prevalent in 2020. That number is a major code if you're an insider. And that's why I call our tabloid the Insider. There's a number of homonyms here. Insight, inside, and then, of course, insight, like looking within. And all these are correlated with the idea of insight into how the world stage works. So again, if you just got here at the IPS.monster website, there's a link to the Auto Hoax Wiki, where we are actively creating a compendium of retro auto hoaxing, going back in time, but we're doing real deep dives and going into the nuance. This is a granular takedown of the MSM and MSM Plus worldview. We're going to be revisiting every PSYOP, and I keep learning stuff that I would not have come across otherwise. So, for example, I had no idea, because I haven't watched it yet, that Mickey 17 has a Trump character who gets shot at, who embodies Trump in all the major ways. Like, I would not have found that out for some time. And the purpose to using AI is to speed this up. We call this auto hoax accelerationism. We have to speed it up. And I'm working on a program, on a class, an online course built around the auto hoaxology textbook that will be used to onboard noobs. Because not only do we have a point, but we are right. Conspiracy theorists are often like, I'm just asking questions, or this is what I heard. Maybe I should be afraid of 5G towers, but that's about it. They're in this foggy zone, the fog of Psywar, the mystified. Wow, my mind is blown by all the Simpsons connections to the fake news. I believe in demystification. We need to demystify and foment a culture of disbelief to replace that with informed disbelief. Critter Sanctuary says, I want to start a GoFundMe to be the first man to land on the sun and be safely returned to Earth. I'm sure fake NASA could pull that off. Well, a private company just sent a probe on the moon. And I've said for some time that we need to start our own space company called Saturn X, and we'll take your money and we'll give you CubeSats. And we will send a craft to the ring of Saturn, and we're going to set up a bunch of crafts there, like an RV park on the ring of Saturn. And the idea here is space steading. So in preparation for future space travel, after we've given Musk and NASA time to work out the bugs, we will send our own manned mission to Saturn, where our infrastructure is already awaiting us. So we came up with this idea, and if you can fake it in CGI, the people will believe it. So we could start a GoFundMe, and we could pay for some pretty good software, and we could simulate a trip to the sun and subsequent return. And who are they to call it fake? Call them anti-science. Call them flat earthers if they don't believe it. Speaking of Saturn, I've always been bothered by Saturn's rings, because I know they're pretty wide. So they're 175,000 miles across. So it's like almost the distance from here to the moon. That's how wide the rings are. But it says here they're only 3,000 feet thick. That doesn't make sense to me. How are the rings so thin, and yet we're able to see them with our naked eyes? I mean, I'm a little incredulous. And I'm also incredulous at the lack of space clouds. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a dust storm, a minor dust storm, it's going to occult the horizon 8 to 10 miles away from you. I cannot see on the other side of the valley here if it's windy. There are tons and tons of debris, cosmic dust, and especially dust, space dust, cosmic dust. There are tons of this stuff just floating around the Earth. Every day, tons of dust and dirt from space just burns up in our atmosphere. And space is full of dirt or dust, cosmic dust. And so my question is, how come a minor dust storm in my town here can block my view a few miles away, but millions and millions of miles of empty space doesn't have enough dust to in any way form a cloud? Like at night, there should be entire sections of the sky that are black, as in occulted by clouds. Like, oh, these space dust clouds have aggregated and they are blocking Mars tonight. Extraterrestrial dust, space dust, star dust, cosmic dust. I mean, we have these beautiful pictures, these paintings, what I consider to be religious art of cosmic dust that NASA presents us. But when it comes to looking up at the night sky on a clear night when there's no clouds on Earth, where are the space clouds? I have a problem with that again. Where are the space clouds? Reverse history says seeing any stars that are supposedly trillions of billions of miles away seems highly unlikely to me. And let me bring up the space chorizo here, because the people who will tell you that you are wrong for not believing that the images that we see from space are fake, those people who will call into question your intellect, your ability to see, they get really hateful and hostile all the time. But these are the same people who fell for the space chorizo. So this is 2022. A physicist's stunning new photo of Proxima Centauri went viral. And this was taken with the space telescope called James Webb Space Telescope. This is a $10 billion telescope. I mean, we're talking about a viral story about a star. French scientist photo of a distant star. Amazing space telescope image. This thing went viral, but then later he admitted it was just a piece of meat that he superimposed against a starry background. A French scientist has apologized for his photo of a slice of chorizo, claiming it was an image of a distant star taken by the James Webb Telescope. So who fell for this? Everybody who believes in NASA and SpaceX. Who didn't fall for it? Well, the people who automatically assume anything from space is likely fake. And my point being, their methodology is it's real until proven fake if it comes from this authority. And as you can see here, they're not actually thinking. They're just believing. So they believe it's real. The only reason they don't come to these conclusions or question these things is because they trust their authorities. That's what it comes down to. Joe Santos says, why isn't the moon look like a dust cloud? The dust would have been sucked into the planets because of their gravity. These are all very interesting ideas. I like Lagrange points. This idea that between different planets and stars, their gravitational fields overlap. And if you can get into certain spots, you can remain somewhat stationary. So there are certain areas like that could be maintained. You could maintain infrastructure in space in a relatively stable area by perfectly balancing between two bodies. And then they've also said that you could take a path through the solar system and reach even distant exoplanets through leveraging the power or leveraging these locations. They call these celestial autobahns. And I thought about this because there was a point where I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about wormholes to reach distant exoplanets. And I thought maybe they're introducing the concept of wormholes in order to prepare the public for Hyperloop, where they fake space travel with Hyperloop. So here we have astronomers discovered a celestial autobahn in the solar system. This could lead to faster space travel. This could accelerate long-distance space travel through gravitational interactions called the Space Superhighway Network. New gravitational superhighway system discovered. Ultra-fast space travel is now possible through these hidden superhighways, networks of celestial... Anyway, this is the thing. Celestial autobahns are the future. So space travel isn't going to be slow and laborious, generational craft where it's multiple generations on the spaceship before you get to your destination. No, this will be like, I want to go to Mars. You just get in, 8 minutes later, you're there. Obrique says, what was his motivation? It was just a joke, they say. But to me, it's ruined the credibility of a $10 billion telescope, and I want my money back. But it's a million miles away. So good luck. It was meant to be a joke, and maybe he didn't know that this is how they actually do things. I mean, it's a fair question as to how much in the know various people are. The astronauts know that space is fake if they've been in front of the green screen. The Blue Origin, SpaceX launches, any of these launches where they send celebrities, like Kate Perry's going to space. Kate Perry, which is kind of interesting because she has called out, quote, space is fakers. And Kate Perry had this performance with a bunch of wires and contraptions where it looked like it's called walking on air. And it looked like she was levitating. And I said at the time that she could easily fake space, that she's evidence that what we see on the ISS is fakeable. I cited her as evidence that this could be faked. And I sent it to those individuals I was debating earlier. And now she's actually going to space. Exactly, Smarty Pants. You'll be on Mars in minutes. It'll be like we didn't even leave the Earth. They're just going to send you in this tunnel to some subterranean potato farm owned by China. Like you're going to be... like our future spacefarers are going to be indentured servants. And, you know, Elon Musk has talked about that. Elon Musk has been accused. Now, this ties in to, I guess, serfdom and Constantine. So we need to look at the relationship between Emperor Constantine and serfdom as it pertains to Elon Musk and Martian indentured servitude. Because I've already connected Musk to Constantine through a couple of different ways, namely the glowing cross on the X building and the vision Constantine had of the glowing cross, the sign that unites the empire. It's part of his role. But yes, Elon Musk's grand plan for a Martian settlement, he considers indentured servitude a viable option. And this is basically where if you don't have enough money to go to Mars, you can work it off. It's a one-way trip anyway. This is from Jacobin.com. Musk's sci-fi futurism is just plutocracy in space. Importing indentured servants to Mars who could work on the red planet to pay... See, this is like a gulag. Mars gulags. And they're selling it as space communism as a good thing. Schools Shotter says, Kate Perry and Tom Cruise are going to be the gatekeepers of the new ISS. Well, they're both trained with dangling from wires. Tom Cruise especially. Okay, again, I'm talking about Musk. Sanders calls out Musk. Bernie Sanders had called him out on this a few times. Kind of another one of these false dichotomies. Bernie Sanders, space communism, or communism, and Musk and this techno-fascism. But yes, trust Elon Musk to make going to space sound terrible. His plan to colonize Mars looks like a scheme to deploy indentured slavery. Mars utopia or indentured servitude. A dystopic empire. Now, the reason why we call him Pope Elon is that the book Mars, A Technical Tale by Werner von Braun is about the first colonizer of Mars called the Elon, building a governmental structure based on Rome. So he's a pope. Pope Elon. Elon Musk's world stage persona has elements borrowed from Pope Constantine. And so I think the serfdom may tie into this, as does the consolidation of the worldview under a single sign, the X being the cross. Klump says indentured servitude is slavery without retirement benefits. Well, the space program is a stalking horse for environmentalism, which is a stalking horse for authoritarian communism. And the capitalists who love the space program, who love Elon Musk, are blind to this. I mean, think about it. Musk has been in on the conversation about the mission to Mars proving, in the space race, proving that capitalism is superior to communism. But what does it take to go to Mars? When you're on Mars, you don't have your house, you don't have your private property, you won't have your wardrobe, you won't have any of the conveniences. You will all be wearing the same space suit with the same look. So you're like ants now, no individuality, and you're going to work the fields. How is that freedom? You might as well go to Siberia, go work on some gulag, and that's a one-way trip. Plain Decoded says, SpaceX plans to launch sheep into orbit to test wool-based space habitats while gravity snacks keep the crew distracted, hoping they don't accidentally orbit into a black hole. Haven't heard that. Although one of the more disturbing developments next to astroplastic, which you don't want to look up, is astrocrete, where they had tied in the idea. I think this is all significant storytelling. They said that you could mix your blood, your sweat, and every other body fluid with the Martian regolith. So you take the Mars dust and you mix it with blood and you build astrocrete. And they said it's a stronger concrete than what we have on Earth. So they will be building Mars and lunar bases out of blood and dirt, blood and soil. So blood and soil is a reoccurring theme that has to do with ethno-fascism. So the idea of Musk and the space program and colonizing Mars, it has all these implications kind of built into it. The idea of colonizing Mars as this utopian endeavor. And I think this is the main thing. If you can convince a bunch of capitalists that the ultimate ideal future is Mars bases, is lunar bases, is becoming multiplanetary, then you've just cut them off of their political economic system. And one of the main things about space is selling us on sustainability. It's all about the sustainability. Capitalism is not sustainable. And I can point to numerous examples of this contrast that they show us in movies between approaching space as capitalists and approaching space as communists, and why the capitalist approach will kill us all. Don't Look Up is about capitalists deciding to mine the comet so they can make more phones. Instead of, there's a Mars program on Netflix where Musk is in it. It's a documentary mixed with the fictional story. And they don't tell you where one ends and the other begins, but it's about the future trips to Mars. One group is led by female scientists who discover life on Mars. The other group is led by male space cowboys from Texas. And this is why Bezos and Musk wore cowboy hats and hang out in Texas. It's part of this narrative. Toxic masculinity, capitalism, space cowboys, going for the money. So in this Mars documentary, the female scientists, and they make this point, they're all women, they discover life on Mars. But then the males show up with their cowboy hats to mine for to drill for oil on Mars. So they have a financial motive. They're looking for life. These guys want money. When they're drilling Mars, they create an earthquake and they kill the life that was just discovered. So what's the lesson here? Well, not only did they cause an earthquake, but their drilling for oil also destroyed their base, and they had to go live with the others. And there was this big debate about letting them in, and a big conflict between the culture of the space cowboy males and the female scientists. But these are not new. There's a trilogy of science fiction books I was looking at. It was Red Planet, Green Planet, and I started looking through these books, and I'm like, okay, this is a narrative that goes back many, many decades, where one group is capitalist, one group is environmentalists who don't want they don't want Earth. They don't want to make Mars Earth. So they want to break from everything. So they colonize Mars, they're terraforming it, but in the process they're turning it into Earth. So there's this big fight now between the two factions. And one faction says, we can no longer afford to advance technologically. We will destroy the world. Yeah, the Mars quake story. Did I say? Yeah, they created Mars quakes. But the storyline is always the same, where all this technological progress is bad for the environment, bad for Gaia, so we need to roll it back. So imagine we go to Mars, and then we destroy the technology, and we start again at a very basic, down, back to nature type of way. And this is the same story I alluded to with Wall-E, the Pixar film, where man covers the Earth in trash, low Earth orbit is filled up with space junk, so we go up into a space ark with Otto, the AI that runs the thing, and eventually the robot that looks like a dove finds evidence of life on Earth in the form of a plant and brings it back to the captain of the ship so we can go back to Earth. Now that's the story of Noah's Ark and the dove getting the olive branch as a message that you can return. And they go back to Earth and they abandon technology. They no longer want the robots to serve them. So they get rid of their slave system, their classist system, and they become farmers. So Wall-E is about a global communist revolution and throwing off all the modern conveniences that weaken us and disconnect us from nature. And incidentally, that's the same storyline in Office. I think it's called, is it called Office Party? What's that movie with the Office? I think it's Office Party. Office something. There's some movie about an office where the guy in the basement blows it up at the end, and then all the workers quit their Office Space. Okay, Office Space. So at the end of Office Space, all these corporate drones with their soul-killing jobs become construction workers, and they pick up tools, and they start tilling the earth. It's just a theme that I've seen for some time. I mean, this is all just engineering, mass opinion, trying to turn us against capitalism and blame it for everything going wrong in the world. Not a new thing. Do you remember the Christmas party shooters? And I'll have to add this to the wiki. But you had these Muslim shooters who shot up a... So they were actually... This whole story was they shot up a Christmas party. And Bill Nye the Science Guy was talking about it. And he said the reason why this couple came from the Middle East, moved into, like, I think it was San Francisco, and they shot up an office party, or an office. They had like a Christmas party they shot up. He said the reason they did it was climate change. So let me see. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Terrorism causes climate change. I'll see if I can find the article. It's pretty good. Oh yeah, here it is. Bill Nye explains the link between climate change and terrorism. So we're talking about this climate change narrative that would suggest that the West is responsible for everything happening in the world, not just the destruction of the world itself, but of how its political ramifications. And he said that what we have done to the environment has necessitated wars for oil, which has created blowback and resentment that turns into terrorism. And he has this long, convoluted explanation for how these radical Islamic terrorists were actually doing so as a result of climate change. Fascinating statement, though. He said that the environmental destruction destroyed their hopes of being farmers. The wars for oil have destabilized their economies and made it easy for terrorists to recruit, and then it has turned them against the West. But for some reason, Bill Nye was asked about the connection between climate change and terrorism. So many interesting examples with this character. His takes are just, they're batty. Climate change made me do it. But when they say climate change, what they mean is the private sector, right-wing capitalists. That's what they really mean. Mount Crushmore Bear says, I'm so glad I caught you live. Hello, all. Yeah, let your friends know. 6:30 p.m. Infinite Plane Radio. I'm also working on, we're kind of upgrading everything. Our publication wing is taking off. And I'm working on setting up the 24/7 stream. But not just a dry replay of previous, but I want to also incorporate our Discord servers and bots. So we talked about Jamie White getting killed, probably real. I don't know if it's fake. I don't think so. The whole X wiki. So if you're not familiar with our wiki, go to ips.monster or any of our pages. It says join the wiki. AI-empowered auto-hoaxing. This is a major step forward. And every time I create an article, I learn something else. I find something else that I wouldn't have found. So we're not going to let them memory hole decades of psyops. Yes, Lean Dion. They all start farming potatoes at the end of Wall-E. Immortal AI says, the ones claiming climate change are the ones causing the most damage to the environment. Yeah, environmentalism is pretty bad for the environment. If you look into it, recycling is just an act of contrition. It's symbolic. If you want to kneel to the earth god that the elite pray to, that they worship, there's no better way than to genuflect before a recycling dumpster, a bin, and put your trash, your recyclables in there. Because what you're doing is you're saying, okay, Gaia, I'm aware that my decisions were bad, but these are my good decisions, and this will make up for it. Or I'm sorry that I breathe. This will help alleviate the harm of my carbon footprint. So it's like a good deed between you and Gaia. But it doesn't actually do anything. Recycling is really symbolic. I would even go so far as to say that the recycling symbol itself is a symbol of Saturn, the earth god, Osiris, generally represented by a 6-pointed star, a hexagram. And if you look at their symbol for the recycling, it actually does contain a hexagram inside of it. And the 3 arrows, I kind of would correlate this with the 3 nails of the crucified sun god symbol, Osiris, or however he's the different iterations. But what is recycling? It's birth, death, and rebirth. It's the cycle. So I kind of think Osiris's death and his resurrection is a recycling of the soul. And so I think it's all just symbolic, and it has an esoteric side. It's Gaia worship. I don't worship Gaia. I don't recycle. So I started watching Interview with a Vampire last night, a new version. And check this out. Oh, Immortal says, I never noticed that. Your subconscious did. We take in so much information all the time, but we only process that which makes sense, is relevant, and we try to, maintain a coherent worldview minute to minute. And a lot of the stuff is subliminal, but it all gets in there. Obrique says Phoenix. Yeah, it's the Phoenix cycle. Yeah, the movie where Matt Damon, Mazelle's referencing, the Mars movie where he farms potatoes, That's I think that's one of the themes here. The farming potatoes is a recurring theme, but it's about the agrarian revolution. It's like instead of leading our lives around the technology and exploiting the world and fossil fuels and all this stuff, it's suggesting that you're on a higher moral plane if you become a farmer. And NASA had released a number of posters that says Mars wants you, like the old Uncle Sam poster, and these were all released into the public domain. Let me see if I can find. Here's some examples of them. Mars Explorers Wanted. And when I saw these, they reminded me of like Soviet space communism propaganda. Become a teacher on Mars, a farmer on Mars. We need you. And one of the things I was talking about Mars was the lack of any sort of distinction. There's no individuals. That if you become a Martian, now you're a worker. Now you're a farmer. Now you're a technician. You're a surveyor. It's sort of like the military, Uncle Sam wants you, where you're part of a specialty. And nothing wrong with that, but what I'm saying is that this to me kind of exemplifies the idea of Mars as a place of self-sacrifice, becoming part of a group. We need you, the collective. It's about collectivism. And they glorify this stuff. And if you haven't looked into space communism, this is not new. I mean, space communism was the subject of a book in 1908 called The Red Star, about a Martian colony who figured out a perfect system, communism, and they sent an Earth scientist to learn from it so they could bring it back down to Earth. But if you look at old Russian propaganda, it's all essentially space communism is kind of this ideal. And that is what it is. My point being is that what they have sold freedom-loving people on is something that's the opposite of what they actually practice and believe in day to day. You're becoming a full-blown environmentalist obsessed with sustainability the instant you go to Mars. Mount Crushmore says, have I been deranged? Are you on the main channel or the backup channel? And if you comment in the comment section, I can go through and add your wrench. Yeah, cosmism, Russian cosmism. This is an interesting area of research if you want to look into it. The idea of outer space as we conceive of it has always been a replacement for heaven, a new iteration. Russian cosmism is a philosophical and cultural movement from the late 19th and early 20th century Russia, integrating religion, science, and metaphysics. And part of the basis for this was actually theosophy. Now, what's intriguing here, because I've been saying that we live in a world that has a religion of Nasatology, and it is a religion. And space is a heaven that all of the previous religions adhere to. All the competing versions of heaven, they don't believe in the other guy's God, but they all believe in space. But listen to this. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a burst of scientific investigation into interplanetary travel driven by Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, and it influenced movements like Russian cosmism, which also incorporates Eastern Orthodox thought. But science fiction and New Ageism is intrinsic into this. And then if you just go forward a few decades, you have Jack Parsons, JPL, L. Ron Hubbard, and the space religion stuff. It's always been about a new religious paradigm. And there's a particular individual here worth studying. His name is Constantine, who coined the phrase multiplanetary species. And Elon Musk has actually quoted Constantine several times. Constantine was a pioneer of theoretical space exploration. He published one of the first serious books, 1903, the first serious book on space travel. But he was unknown outside of the Russian Empire. He formed the Society for Studies of Interplanetary Spaceflight. But he also wrote a book called The Will of the Universe. unknown intelligent forces. And he propounded the philosophy of panpsychism. So he did say that we would colonize the Milky Way, but he did believe that there is some kind of guiding intelligence, that the universe is intelligent, that everything's information, everything's aware and conscious, including space. So from the very beginning of the space program and all the significant figures around it, you can't really separate it from this. Yeah, let me open up phones if you want to call in. What the auto hoax wiki means is that, because you would never get to tell the truth on Wikipedia ever. You get edited out. So we're creating a parallel of Wikipedia with the aid of AI, and we're just augmenting it with additional information. And one of the things I'm pointing out too is that we're not documenting conspiracy theories. I don't care about conspiracy theories. We're documenting extra facts that make us non-believers. So it's MSM view contrasted with the MSM minus. We're not doing any of this MSM plus garbage. Oh, anyway, I was watching Interview the Vampire, to get back to this picture, and it opens up with, I was a 33-year-old man when I became a vampire. I don't know why that's significant, but it just seems like, what is it with that number and these directors? In other news, green flame erupts from the ground at Texas Tech. Okay, phones are open, 505-510-4226. Green flames in Texas. I don't know if it means anything, but the color green, ever since Luigi, it's been kind of a thing we've been noticing. Crisis actors are being paid $40 an hour in Washington. Missed out. I need 20 people for a peaceful protest, $20 an hour. This person had a $32,000 budget for the protest that we saw over the last 3 days. We need people for a peaceful protest. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay?
Hey Tim, yeah, I can. You're a little quiet, but I can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, what were you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. What were you commenting on?
So I was going through again that introduction to Jesuit theater book, and I found something that was kind of interesting about the purpose of comedy versus tragedy and the didactic purpose of the theater. And this quote, I'll just read it. It was from this Jesuit general named Giovanni, and he was writing to the general, I can't read the Latin there, the whole society. He wrote as this advice for young dramatists, young Jesuit dramatists creating plays. He said, comedy's purpose is chiefly to instruct the common people by examples that are close to home, taken from ordinary life. But tragedy is designed to instruct princes and men of high estate. So the analogy that I bring that to us in the world stage is I noticed very recently there's a very popular meme of J.D. Vance where his face kind of looks like a baby. Have you seen those anywhere? I don't know if you've...
Yeah, they're hideous. I've seen them. They're hideous.
Very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't find them funny either. In fact, I find it kind of bizarre how astroturfed and how many people do. But I've noticed it doesn't matter whether someone's liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. It's being spread by everyone. They think it's hilarious. Everyone thinks it's funny. And what I came to realize, it's like, the tragedy versus comedy. The ultimate point is that tragedies are for higher society and comedies are for like lower, us peons. And these ideas can be expressed in, you almost disarm someone with comedy. You can disarm it. And when I think of Trump in his first term, he was hilarious. The meme magician, blowing people out on debates, calling Jeb and others like, short and stuff. Like it, he was hilarious at first, but now it's like gone. All the comedy and magic that's come from Trump. We still find some occasional funny parts if you watch him, but generally it's gone. And now it's almost being shifted to Vance. It's the most subtle form of propaganda that's not based on policy or any of that typical, more conscious thinking. It's really just comedy. If you can portray someone as funny with memes, by the way, because that is part of the world stage, you can almost disarm people of any criticism and make them think, they're not that dangerous. They're actually kind of nice.
Yeah,
They make me laugh here or there.
valid points here because we talk about emotional manipulation all the time through psyops, but it's not just shootings, it's not just salacious scandals or terror attacks, but it's also this other area that the comedians get into, and it's probably not a coincidence that many of these like big claims are put out there by comedians. They're floated out there almost as though it discredits the idea or makes it safe if you package it in comedy. But I've noticed a ton of far right comedians specifically being used for the promulgation of narratives, and it's like for some reason it's like comedy is a shortcut into somebody's mind to get in their head. It's an involuntary reaction you get.
Yeah,
It hooks them.
and it, like the when we talk about like psyops and world stage manipulation, emotional manipulation, I think this framework is fascinating for considering what target audience they're working towards. So comedy is for us peons, like the lower classes, to make us like or accept a concept, a politician, an idea, an actor, whatever, in that way. And for me, I've been studying for so long Mormonism. I don't think it's any mistake that there were so many South Park episodes, the musical. There's been remixed versions of that old documentary, Mormon Jesus, and it seemed like such a joke. But nowadays, there are all these serious, like if you will, tragedies that portray Mormonism as good. There was like Sound of Freedom, and there's Homestead, and a lot of these. It's moving towards a more serious direction. Like Christianity is what will bring America back to what it was before. It's no longer seen as ridiculous or silly or absurd. So just a quick comment. That's all I want to say because I know I do talk for like half an hour every time I call in. So just wanted to put that thought out there. Tragedy versus comedy.
It's all useful information. And by the way, I'm going to be putting together a short tutorial just to explain how I'm creating these articles for the wiki. And I'm going to be releasing it specifically for individuals like you because you do these deep dives. And you could take this and we could get all these points that you bring up, all these different areas put into a format and then
it's a good thing to have a wiki.
Exactly. We could wiki this stuff.
Because in the chat, it's like we do it, but it can get lost in the past. But it's like when it's all organized in there. In the future, if there's a future fake psyop or even one that you want to talk about with someone in just send them the article, and it'll have just citations, every single thing that makes them look at it from a different perspective versus having to just rely on memorizing a bunch of facts and conversation, for sure.
Not to mention finding stuff. And hey, did you have any thoughts on this new movie, Mickey 17, how the main character, the antagonist, Mark Ruffalo's character, is based on Trump and gets shot at? What do you think of that?
I think it's fascinating because earlier in the stream he pointed his connections to Hulk, right? Like he portrayed the Hulk in the Avengers movies and stuff. So there's again he's the Trump proxy, right? So it's very consistent, but not done as obviously as the machete example. These are very subconscious personas that are established that mix in comic book characters, video game association, just folk heroes. It's far more subconscious than people think. And it's just, I think it's consistent with the rest of the programming we've discussed on the show.
Well, one thing, Machete, so Robert De Niro as Trump is talking about illegal immigrants. In this Mickey 17, which I haven't seen yet, the Marco Ruffalo character is talking about colonizing an all-white planet. So xenophobia is another common theme. But anyway, I appreciate your call as always. And I'll be putting up a video soon, too, because I want to get 3 or 4 or 5 of us to be putting up articles like every couple of days or so and really fill this thing out. And so I'm going to be opening the floodgates here so we can let the truth out and see what people do with it. Because I put out an article about Bill Hicks and Alex Jones, just showing why people think they're the same. And it's one of my more popular tweets of the last few months, and just randomly tweeted it. So thank you for the call, and call back anytime.
For sure. Thanks. Bye.
All right, let's see. Jamairan May says, tired of this reality game yet? as soon as I figured out it was a game, it became fun. Like, this is actually fun. And calling it a game is I think appropriate. I compare it to the glass bead game. I'm reading Hess's The Glass Bead Game, Magister Ludi, Master of the Game, and it's about a futuristic utopian society. It's in the 23rd century. And in the 23rd century, we're at some kind of world peace, and there's this group of individuals, like in this school, in this, like this, and it's all fictional, of course, but it's about the master of the game. And it's kind of vague about the game because this book came out in 1940. But you're trying to imagine somebody writing a book 1930s, 1940, and trying to imagine the year 2300, pre-internet, pre a lot of the stuff that happened in the 20th century. But it's kind of vague in how the game is actually played or what it is. But from what I'm gathering here, it's a group of individuals who are looking at humanity's past and all the different time periods and different events and finding connections between it all. And out of these connections, they're formulating other constructions. And it's kind of, again, it's purposefully vague. But what it sounds to me like what the author is conveying is something like what we're doing here, where there's a game-like quality to understanding this place and how it's all been manipulated, like reverse engineering history and finding out how much of it's a construct. So I'm reading this book, and the main character, his name is Joseph Connect. And I think that might be significant because what we're doing here is we're connecting things that are supposed to be random. We're connecting the dots like the stereotypical conspiracy theorist. But the thing of it is, what we are arriving at is the right conclusions because we're not inserting any kind of logically fallacious argument or proposition to explain what we don't understand. We're recognizing when we don't know. Because there are people who say, I know that predictive programming is done by higher powers like aliens or the universe. I know it's a mystical thing. They know this, so they have no reason to continue to seek. That's why I think it's important not to accept false models prematurely. The model of media in which it's manipulated by a higher power and is full of weird coincidences.
Thank you for feeding the cracked in case. The IPS thanks you for your support and participation. Some gas for the tank.
Hey, thank you very
Thanks.
much for the gas in the tank. And this wouldn't be possible, without the supporters. And I've been making it a point to expand what we're doing and hopefully enlarge the think tank. We have, at some points, like 200 people listening at a time, 300 people. And it gets to be very engaging, especially right after a big psyop. And one of the purposes to activating bots is when this started, when the term auto-hoaxer was coined, when people noting things to be fake were prominently representing this idea and competing with mainstream, that's when they put the brakes on it. That's when YouTube became censored. They didn't want those of us who know what's going on to tell the truth. They want conspiracy theorists so they can publicly censor them and chastise them. But we're about to expand, I think, into other areas, and this wiki is a crucial part of it because all we're doing here is we are creating a third branch of media. You've got your mainstream, you got your alternative, but they're in the box. And so here we are forming this third party. It's kind of nebulous. There's a raft here, there's a think tank there, there's a group there, but it's not a separate self-aware entity. And that's what this think tank has become. And so we're going to expand this. And the way to do so is to make it possible for people who are skeptical to onboard, to very quickly deprogram. It's not brainwashing. Brainwashing is what got you into the mainstream box. Deprogramming is what gets you out. Mango says, I dig your show because you have no commercials. This is a place where honesty prevails. Appreciate that. And wait until the IPS Insider distribution picks up. Once we have 3, 4, 500, 600 copies a month going, and then building up from there. And I think I'm going to be able to distribute many more copies through Amazon. I'm trying to work out my fulfillment by Amazon thing, where I give each issue a UPC code. I order a stack from the publisher and send it direct to Amazon. So this can be scaled up. And that's what we're doing. We're working on scaling up, getting more information. And as time goes by, bad explanations are disappearing. They're being drowned out. Like, I don't care if you still believe in false flags and second shooters and InfoWars. If you're still drinking the Alex Jonestown Kool-Aid, good for you. If you're still hitting the Q pipe, good for you. Like, that's fine. You can stay in your ideological boxes, whatever rut that you're in. You can still duck behind a guardrail if you wish. But I'm not aiming for the people who are intransigent, who aren't being reasonable. And we're pro-offering reason. And if you don't know about the PSYOP entertainment complex, it's because you haven't consulted our information. And that's forgivable right now. It's understandable right now. But in the future, it'll be viewed as a omission. Like, why aren't they talking about fakery? That should be the question. Alt media is always just the anti-position, reflexively reacting to everything pushed by the mainstream and the woke. But they're always in a reactive position. I don't react. I respond. After that plane, flight, whatever, the American Airlines planes, when it hit the helicopter, I didn't immediately say, send your thoughts and prayers to the victims. I didn't immediately say, oh, it's so sad. I was like, I'm going to wait 3 days before I react. I don't have any spare F's to give because in all likelihood it's a hoax. But I'm going to wait. I'm not going to say it's a hoax until I have more information, but I'm not going to assert it to be real because you don't have enough information to do so. Instead, I'm going to wait. And I'm going to look for the hallmarks of a hoax. And we know what these are. Predictive programming, concurrent drills, and immediate political utility for each side in a bifurcated way. And what did we have? Oh, the right wing says it's caused by DEI hires and female pilots. The left wing says it's caused by right wing cuts to the government, firing air traffic control. So the left is blaming Musk and Trump. The right is blaming Biden's DEI policies. So it's bifurcated in the response. Drills, well, there were rescue drills for pulling people out of the cold water going on at that time. And the helicopter, the Black Hawk, was in the middle of a continuity of government evacuation drill when it was hit. So they were doing a drill when it was hit. That sounds familiar. There were 88 drills going on when 9/11 happened. So what's more likely? It's a real event that impacted a fake event. No, it was a drill. The whole thing was a drill and fake. Kaoki Kesh says, I always say coming from mainstream, it's false until proven to be true. Yeah, fake until proven real is one of our main axioms. And if anybody has a problem with that, then they don't understand the point of media. The media is there to provide facts to support their claims. If they're not providing the facts or the evidence, then why should we believe them? And the fact that we've caught them lying so many times means that we no longer give them the benefit of the doubt. So fake until proven real, unless something changes and they suddenly become objective. But that's not what they are. So fake until proven real if. There is an if here. Like, if it's mainstream, even if it's real, even if it seems real, it might be real, there's still agenda, there's still the omissions and how they frame it. But generally speaking, I have an if. Like, if it's a national story with immediate political utility accompanied by drills and predictive and concurrent programming. So with the plane hitting the helicopter, that was right after Flight Risk came out. And the cover of Flight Risk resembled one of the drills. And Flight Risk was during the Challenger explosion week. And I said, this is the week of aerial immolations. It was the week of Kobe Bryant's helicopter exploding. So you also had the Eagles and KC in this game. And the Philadelphia Eagles sent a tweet with a helicopter on it, weirdly. Anyway, there are so many signs at the time, and it just all pointed to PSYOP. Mount Crushmore says, immediate GoFundMe is a pretty good sign. Well, GoFundMe and Give, Send, Go, if they're publicized. GoFundMe is how they pay the left-wing crisis actors. Give, Send, Go is right-wing. And I've said this before, it's not a coincidence. Like when I mentioned how Luigi goes to jail as Daniel Penny gets out. Daniel Penny is a right-wing vigilante. He represents the upper class in this class warfare view. That's why he works for J.P. Morgan now. That's why he hung out with J.D. Vance and Trump, because he represents their interests. The right wing has always been making the claim that you got to get out of the cities because the subways are violent because the left-wing Democrats are in control. So you have this dialectic class warfare. Daniel Penny, vigilante, killing somebody in the subway to keep them safe. This was a vigilante that the right wing was calling for. Well, then who's Luigi? He's the vigilante the left wing is calling for. He kills a CEO, representative of the upper class. So you have two vigilantes juxtaposed, Luigi and Daniel Penny. One goes into jail, one goes out. The left wing thinks Daniel Penny should be in jail. The right wing thinks that Luigi should be in jail. So the left wing sees Daniel Penny as, of course, a criminal and their guy as a hero. So anyway, I'm bringing up this because you have this perfect split down the middle with all of these various characters on the world stage. So right now, there's a GoFundMe for Luigi. Guess who has the biggest Give, Send, Go prize of all time? Daniel Penny. So again, left, right, GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go. It's a consistent pattern. But they've presented us with these characters that are just right out of the movies. Ooh, nice. Starboy Devoid. New Luigi-inspired Law & Order episode next week. So I watched the trailer to Mickey 17, and the guy had a raincoat on, and I said, that looks just like Luigi, because in the trailer he's smiling, and he's got a hoodie. And I said it to my friends at the theater, I'm like, that's Luigi, watch. And it turns out that the movie is anti-MAGA. It turns out that the main character, the one I referenced, is makes an attempt on the Trump guy. And that's why it's a coincidence, not a coincidence, that Luigi shoots the CEO outside of that Hilton. That was the Hilton where Trump accepted the position to be the 47th CEO of America. And it's a 47-story building. What was the cartoon that had the Kobe helicopter crash, said Dr. Bass Ackwards. That was Legends of Chamberlain Heights. And right before Kobe crashed, and hey, I have to say this too. Before that, I had pointed out at the beginning of January, I said, watch for fire explosions in the sky. We had picked up on a pattern. So here's the clip. End of Days came out on 1/1/16/2016. Legends of Chamberlain Heights. It's Kobe Bryant. His helicopter crashes, and then it explodes. There's another commercial where Kobe Bryant is with Kobe. I'm sorry, with Kanye. So Kanye West at the time. He was still Kanye. It's before he became Kanye or Ye-Dolph. There's a commercial where the two of them are hanging out, and Ye gets into a helicopter, which explodes.
Almost there.
Oh, shit! It's Kobe Bryant!
Help me.
Just pass me the trophies and we'll pull you out.
Pass.
So there you go. Kobe Bryant blows up in his helicopter. There are so many examples of this, and it's a whole other rabbit trail. It connects to 2020, interestingly. It connects to the summer of 2020 riots. There's some vax connections. The Black Mamba thing was celebrated by the NBA on his 42nd birthday. There's so much code in this stuff. Jamarian says 3/11/25 was quite uneventful. Yes, 3/11/2025, a hoax anniversary. Usually 9/11 you have some kind of commemoration. Like in 2020 on 9/11, it was the 19th anniversary. That was the date, and this is interesting, that Derek Chauvin went to jail. So, I mean, on trial. So Derek Chauvin has a hearing 9/11 2020. Now, why this is significant is that the event itself has all kinds of references to 2020. This is all intriguing here. Now that I think about it, I have to go back and put this into a wiki because it's nuanced. So, for example, Derek Chauvin kneels on Floyd for 8:46, sunsets at 8:46, 9/11 kicks off at 8:46. So when Derek Chauvin is on, has a hearing on 9/11 at 8:46 a.m. that day, there was a moment of silence nationally. The moment of silence at 8:46 a.m. was a reference to 9/11 when the first plane hit the tower. 8:46. George Floyd's attorney, Benjamin Crump, and all of his family had masks on for COVID, and the masks had 8:46 on it. Not for 9/11, but for the timestamp that Floyd was kneeled on. So on 9/11, they're all wearing 8:46s during the 8:46 moment of silence. So the 9/11 psyop was overlapping. And then you had another individual. This is all just, I don't want to go too far into it, but now that I think about it, the timestamps are always huge clues. Verkjan says, the dawning of the age of Aquarius, or are we already in that? I happen to think that the new age kicked off on 12/20/2021, I think, or no, it's 12/21/2020. It was that great conjunction, what they call the great conjunction. It was an alignment of, let me see if I can pull this up. Great conjunction. And I think this coincided with the Great Reset, because the Great Reset was a conspiracy theory at first. So here you go. On December 21st, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn were so close it looked like one star. They call it the Great Conjunction. And it was on the winter solstice. And this hadn't happened since Jesus was born. So it has this idea of a new age. Because, of course, Jesus, the age of Pisces, moving into the age of Aquarius. Alfred says, there's a fine line. I found a lot of power in never acknowledging the MSM perspective. It's a subtle blend to warp something avant-garde under the trappings of mass appeal. Well, you know what? I think the main thing here is ataraxia, peace of mind. The original skeptics, as it was codified by Piro, we're talking about the original skeptics, were all about suspending judgment until you had more facts. And the term they used was epiche, which means suspend judgment. And if you suspend judgment, it means you don't have to react. And you don't have to get emotionally entangled. And if you compare somebody who reacts to everything, think tinfoil hat, terrified, xenophobic conspiracy theorist who is afraid of everything, the internet, AI, 5G towers, they're just full of fear. Because the MSM Plus perspective, the red pill is a fear pill. And they trade peace of mind for what they think is higher awareness. They think they're awake. They're awake and they're scared. It's like, no, you're having a nightmare. You're actually having a nightmare. The blue pillars are dreaming. They're blissfully dreaming, but you're having a nightmare. You're not awake. It's a false awakening. But by dismissing the alternative and the mainstream, it leaves us in this place of being suspended, suspending judgment, not reacting till we have enough information. And then when we have enough information, generally, it is in the direction of everybody else overreacted. There's nothing to worry about. But what happens over time is you're not accumulating the stress. You're not triggerable or programmable. You're not in the political horseshoe. You achieve what is called ataraxia. And that was the term they used to describe the state of quiescence that you get from being skeptical. So I'm not afraid of nukes. I'm not afraid of extraterrestrial aliens or terrestrial aliens. Breaking news. Elon Musk labels Senator Mark Kelly, former astronaut, a traitor. This Musk versus NASA beef is all fake. This is another controlled thing. So left loves government, loves NASA. Right hates government, but they love SpaceX, Blue Origin, Bezos. You know, we're talking about this government versus or private and public. You know, the who should take us into space? Who takes us into the future? Private individuals and space cowboys? Nope. We have to go up as a collective. And just as Elon Musk has been turned into the enemy of the internet, of the commons, he's destroying free speech. He's the enemy of the free flow of information because he's let all these mind viruses out. So Musk is seen by the world as a threat because of misinformation and what I call mind junk, because I think it correlates with space junk. He is also being pointed out as the person who is destroying space. So these are commons. Cyberspace is a global commons. He's destroying it, an entire system. Low Earth orbit is a commons. We all share it. The environment is a commons. Capitalism is destroying it. So these are stories that they're telling us to get us to accept that Musk is a villain who must go, that the private individual is too powerful, must be stopped. And if you haven't kept up with these stories, there have been numerous stories lately about how, look, this just came out yesterday. Elon Musk's SpaceX, humanity's space success may impact future. We're seeing more and more stories about how space debris is actually creating hazards for air travel, and how we're actually creating a hazardous place above. Watch Elon Musk Starship explode in space and debris lands on a tropical island. Elon Musk shares visuals of Starship debris falling. Musk is growing. He's behind US's growing space junk. He's being slammed for filling orbit with space junk. A new deadly era of space junk is dawning. So this is a story that's been evolving. But what I'm saying here, there's a correlation deliberately being made here between space junk and mind junk. And it's the same person behind both. And there's a reason for it. Who pays for the environmental damage when a starship falls in my backyard? From Clean Technica. When space junk fell on my neighbor's farm, the law had no answers for us. Space trash is falling from the sky, and that's not the worst of it. But here's where it's new. Falling space junk delaying flights. Researchers say space debris is threatening airplanes. Will Elon Musk drop space junk on your head? Keeping space tidy should be a global UN goal. So it's not NASA space junk, it's Musk. And then NASA has their ISS, and Musk is saying, take it down. Musk is being paid to take it down. So the question here is, it's again, do we go into space as capitalists? Does America, as a superpower, go into the universe? Or does America have to kowtow to this global collective, and then we all go up into space in a more sustainable way? I've seen some talk about how unfettered capitalists going into space are going to bring down trillions of dollars in wealth, which will obviously destroy everything. Nationwide protests against Elon Musk are escalating. President Trump's inauguration was followed by more than a dozen violent and destructive acts directed at Tesla. This is right out of the madness. Moon to turn blood red on March 14th, so we can look forward to that tonight. Maggie had a comment on Paul and the Plane and other shaped traders. I love the information about the Vazzini sculpture. The caller was so interesting. Oh, same caller tonight. You're talking about, oh no, that was it JL? So whoever talked about the sculpture at the Vatican with Jesus in front of a nuke. Commenter says, I think they use the number 33 as a copycat nature of the spine and the freezing and thawing of our consciousness. They use this number to absolve their sins. I think these planes are all connected to the Aquarian age, sudden events, and anything connected with the air. Interesting comments. And here is I talked about this earlier. The coin was called Axion. I don't know how many flat earthers who trusted all these popular flat earthers like Paul and the Ball and Robbie Davidson put their life savings into this coin. But according to the investigation by Infinite Jack, Axion, since they first brought it out there, has 0 volume, 0 market cap. Marcel says, Musk said empathy's a weakness. He's on Team Evil. Well, Musk is an operation. So that's why I don't get personally triggered. I don't have Musk derangement syndrome or any of these syndromes because these are all constructs. These are all individuals who have an organization behind them. And Musk is an amalgamation of many different individuals and agendas. It's like you tell the right-wingers, hey, this guy here with the WEF, Klaus Schwab, wants to put a microchip in your brain and put you on a Mars base, a closed system that you can never leave. And they would say that's crazy. That's a science fiction nightmare. But then Musk says, hey, let me put a microchip in your head after killing a bunch of monkeys trying to perfect it. And they're like, can't wait. They see him as a savior of free speech, which is a joke. No one has done more to get public support for the destruction of free speech than Elon Musk, and it's on purpose.
That maybe not everything is true that you've heard about me.
And you get a search warrant, you're looking at some.
This is Timothy McVeigh and Agent Paul Weissapal. So I did this background search for a wiki article on this one. I'm doing deep dives into all these world stage characters. So I will take your suggestions. Like if somebody thinks that person A is person B or person A faked their death, I will look into it. And we are deep diving. And one of the things the AI does, the Perplexity AI, in creating a wiki article, is it will find the most obscure TikTok videos. It'll find the content that supports our claims if it's there. And there is plenty here to suggest that McVeigh is not dead. And the conspiracy theories about McVeigh not dying, that it was all staged, were there when he died. There were claims immediately. But they were always MSM plus conspiracy theories. They never talked about the intrinsic fakeability of it, but it's largely been accepted by many people that he was a Fed. And it does seem that he's been identified. And one of the connections between the two is person A killed 168. There's a government daycare center. Children. Person B rescued 168 children a couple years ago. So he made headlines for 168 saved after making headlines for 168 killed. And I think it's the same person. Dr. Back Astward says, how does anyone know how they managed to provide air to breathe for the ISS floaters? Is it air on demand? It's interesting to look into the machine itself and how it stays up. I think it's inconsistent with reality in how stable it is. Although when I look at the video footage from the space station, it never looks like it's actually video. It looks like it's a video view from within a CGI environment. But they say it uses these gyros to maintain equilibrium, and that it is also skipping off of the residual atmosphere of the Earth, like a rock skipping on a river, so it doesn't fall down. And every once in a while, a resupply module shows up, a booster, and when it bumps it, it gives it a little more push to make a few thousand more orbits before it needs another push. But if it wasn't receiving periodic boosters, it would go into orbital decay and it would fall to the Earth. That's what they say. FAA halts flights after Musk Starship explodes and rains debris down. These are all things that we called in advance. Oh, by the way, there's a McVeigh. This is why I was looking into this. Next week, McVeigh comes out. Comes out on 3/21. So keep your eye out for this movie. And I'll get more into it and why he's significant. McVeigh and Alex Jones were radicalized at Waco. And this all ties into Trump, to right-wing nationalism, 9/11, Turner Diaries, all the psyops. McVeigh's like the Osama bin Laden of the right-wing extremists. And he's been constructed. It's a total construct. Mount Crushmore says, have you looked into what Cody Ogers has to say regarding Timothy McVeigh? Oh, Cody Snodgers. No, I'd like to know. The Turner Diaries, which was his inspiration, has a great deal of predictive programming for 9/11. And even 2020. It gets Turner Diaries. I'll have to do an article on that. Is an intriguing piece of FBI literature. The cover art came to life in 2020 in the form of the McCloskeys, if you haven't seen that. Okay, I'm looking up this person that you mentioned, and Oklahoma City bombing. Former CIA asset Robert Cody Snodgers said he was recruited to bomb the building. CIA offered me $1 million to commit the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay. I'll take a look. Hidden in plain sight, the truth about Timothy McVeigh. Black Ops agent. Most likely he's disinformation because it wasn't a real bombing. But who knows? Who knows? But it was certainly not a real bombing, and it's worth looking back on. McVeigh executed, 33 years old, on 6/11/2001, inspired by the Branch Davidian thing, where 33-year-old Dave Koresh, whose followers thought he was Jesus, was incinerated. And this was alluded to last year on 4/19 when Maxwell Zrello set himself on fire outside the courthouse where Trump was on trial. Jamarian says, hey, Tim Osman, I have a product for your web store. Adult coloring books. An auto hoax adult coloring book. Yeah, that would be really good. I've done coloring books before. I have made a few of those. I did one with some cats a while ago. And an auto hoaxing one would be rather interesting. It's a great idea. I will probably do it. If you have any specific hoaxes, it wouldn't be hard. It would not be hard to create or to come up with, like our favorite crisis actors, maybe behind the scenes at various psyops. But yeah, sure. In fact, comic books are often coloring books are marketed as stress relief. So it kind of goes along with the idea of ataraxia. You know, everybody's watching the news, they're crying, they're donating to GoFundMe and GiveSendGo because Seattle got nuked and Fallout's coming, so they're panicking, rushing to the store to fight over toilet paper. Meanwhile, we'll just be sitting back here with coloring books because we know what's really going on. All right, well, this has been great. Again, I want to remind you tomorrow, same time, same place. And this has all been enabled by all of you, of course, supporting this channel. So this is going to be a daily thing. Tonight, though. Tonight, I'm going to be heading over to Discord, and we're going to be putting together the next episode of South Pole. So we'll have that to premiere after tomorrow's live stream. And the idea of doing the live stream and then a premiere is to get as many people there at the same time. Ooh, Truman B. Good call. Recent InfoWars reporter murder is probably playing into the release of the McVeigh movie release. Narrative building for the next PSYOP. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. And they're educating us about McVeigh. Well, last year, at the same time, in fact, it might have been the same day. Let me take a look. Waco, American Apocalypse. Television miniseries was released March 22nd, 2023. So this Waco, American Apocalypse comes out, and then Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco 2 days later. And I noticed many connections between this documentary and Trump. Trump vows retribution at Waco rally. At Waco rally, Donald Trump has the first rally for his, is the first one for the 2024, defends January 6th. Trump holds first 2024 rally at Waco. So you had Waco, American Apocalypse. Look, Trump rally falls during anniversary of Waco's dark past. Trump picks Waco, calls it the final battle. Well, Dave Koresh said it was the apocalypse. Same terminology. So he kicks off his campaign in Waco, and that was March. It came out at the end of March. Well, here we have McVeigh coming out. So they're connecting all these dots. All right, appreciate all the comments, and I will definitely get started on a coloring book. That actually sounds like a great idea. And we'll make sure to include many images of Fepe, the penguin you see on the screen pointing the gun. It says auto hoax or GTFO, which is actually good advice. We actually implemented that as a policy. If you're not auto hoaxing, you're taking up air and time and space. There are so many people who are ahead of that. We don't need to slow this tank down for people who are bitterly clinging to corpses, fake corpses, still running around with theatrical blood and all that. But yeah, this whole Alex Jones starting off at Waco, highly significant. In fact, one more thing, because I watched the trailer for it and it said the ATF raided the compound because they had 1.6 million rounds. So think January 6th, Waco, guns, ATF takes the guns. This is just one example of many. Oh, and this is the story. So when they went into Waco, it was because of gun violations. The Waco siege. And at the compound, they had 1.6 million rounds that were seized, or that they were going to go seize. No coincidences. And then Alex Jones goes on to Piers Morgan after the ATF, after the DHS said that they were purchasing 1.6 billion rounds. So 1.6 billion rounds, hollow point rounds, by the government to shoot patriots, according to Alex Jones. And he said if they try to take the guns, we're going to experience 1776 all over again. He had this rant about it. But Jones was at Waco, and that's where the gun grab narrative really started. When they come to take the guns, it's Armageddon. Turner Diaries had the same narrative, and Turner Diaries motivated McVeigh. Braveheart says it's liberating to know even these events are disinfo. Yes, they didn't just start faking the news when we noticed. They've been faking it for a long time. Anyway, thank you for joining. I appreciate your comments. If you're not on the newsletter or getting news alerts, go to ips.monster. You can get news alerts by signing up, by getting into Discord, by getting into Telegram. And these are going to be automated. When I was trying to do live notifications on all these platforms, it was a pain. I didn't always hit them all, and it was just a headache. But now it's automated. So I'm going to expect our numbers to go up. So thanks for joining. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax, or GTFO.